Shen Yu is 23 years old, a hardcore otaku, a college dropout, and a guy who keeps calling his cafe job an internship just to protect his pride. Life hasn't exactly been kind to him. His coworkers push him around, customers bark orders at him, and he constantly wonders why he didn't just finish his major and get a stable job. If he had known things would turn out like this, maybe he would have made different choices. Even on his way home, the world refuses to give him peace. A strange girl wearing bunny ears suddenly approaches him, smiling as if she's been waiting for him. She calls him handsome, says her sister has been waiting for him for a long time. Shen Yu awkwardly insists she has the wrong person. She doesn't back down. She leans closer, teases him, offers him a discount. 300, cash or card. Shen Yu immediately realizes this is a misunderstanding and walks away frustrated. This isn't the first time people have mistaken him for someone else. Apparently, his face has a universal confuse me with someone else setting enabled. Delivery guys mix him up. Strangers call him by random names. People swear he looks like somebody famous. After 23 years, he has accepted one cruel truth. His greatest physical trait is being mistaken for other men. Finally, he reaches home. But the moment he steps inside, something feels off. The hallway light flickers, then dies. Darkness swallows the entrance. And then, a voice. Cold, distant, ancient. It whispers about destruction, about ashes, about blood and flesh being reduced to nothing. Shen Yu freezes. Is this a hallucination? A ghost? Is his cheap old apartment actually haunted? Lightning crashes. And somewhere far away, in a grand palace from another world, a ritual is underway. A king sits upon his throne, chanting. Before him, a young girl bound by ropes kneels inside a glowing magic circle. She trembles as red light surrounds her. The king calls upon the Lord of Ash, a being of destruction who annihilates stars and brings eternal misfortune. They offer the girl as a living sacrifice. Centuries have passed since the Lord of Ash last answered. Tonight, they pray he will return. The sky splits with lightning. The magic circle erupts in blinding light. And in a flash, something appears. But it is not what they expected. Instead of a towering cosmic entity made of limbs and starlight, Shen Yu crashes onto a dusty table, coughing, complaining, completely confused. He looks around and sees the girl still tied up. For a split second, he panics and blurts out the first thing that comes to mind. Is she a ghost? Blood nearly shoots from his nose when he realizes she's very much alive, and very close. He unties her ropes without effort. The enchanted bindings snap instantly in his hands. The girl stares at him in shock. To her, this is undeniable proof. Only the great Lord of Ash could break sacred summoning restraints so easily. She drops to her knees, calls him by a grand, terrifying title. Ruler of white fog, destroyer of stars, eternal Lord of Ash. Shen Yu blinks. Wait, what? She describes a monstrous cosmic being of unimaginable horror. A radiant entity with limbs and a blazing head filled with sparks of destruction. And then she looks at him with complete reverence. He slowly points at himself. Me? After a brief internal debate fueled by years of anime consumption, Shen Yu reaches a shocking but logical conclusion. Maybe he really was summoned. Maybe this is another world. Maybe he's been reborn as some kind of demon lord. Honestly, that sounds better than working at a cafe. So instead of denying it, he plays along. He offers her coffee from his thermos. The coffee begins bubbling and glowing with red magic energy. Terrifying from her perspective, completely normal from his. She nervously offers him her life. Says she was raised to be a sacrifice. Says her existence belongs to him now. For the first time, Shen Yu stops joking. He realizes something important. This isn't a game. This girl was meant to die. And somehow, instead of a god of destruction, they summoned a socially awkward otaku. He tells her to live, to keep living properly, to stop thinking of herself as disposable. The glowing magic fades. He vanishes. Left behind, the girl, Anna, clutches his words like divine scripture. She believes the Lord of Ash has given her a mission, to live. And as she looks at the space where he disappeared, one question lingers in her heart. Was this truly the reward he granted her? Or is something far greater about to begin? The Order of Ash in Chaos had spent 1,000 years preaching devotion to the Lord of Ash. They built temples in his name. They sacrificed in his name. They whispered prayers into the dark, begging for even a trace of his favor. And yet, in an entire millennium, he had answered only a handful of times. So when Anna thought about it, a ridiculous idea slipped into her mind. Could it be that the great Lord of Ash simply preferred young girls? The moment that thought formed, she froze in horror and grabbed her head. How could a mere mortal possibly understand the will of such a mysterious god? Trying to calm herself, she lifted the still bubbling drink he had given her. Even now it shimmered with strange energy. She took a careful sip, almost reverently. Later, as rain poured from the sky, she stepped outside the palace. A radiant dome of light surrounded her. The rain never touched her clothes. The water bent away from her body as if afraid. She stared in awe. Even nature bows before the Lord of Ash. Anna had grown up in an orphanage. She had never been allowed to walk alone through the city, never allowed to experience freedom. But tonight, for the first time, she walked alone in Nolan, the capital and one of the largest cities in the world. Perhaps this was his gift to her. Still, she knew she had to return to the church. Meanwhile, in another world, Shen Yu crashed back into his apartment, or what he thought was his apartment. He hit the floor head first, earning himself a painful bruise. When he woke up the next morning in the half-dark, he wondered if everything had been a dream. Maybe he never left Earth. Maybe there was no summoning ritual. Maybe there was no cult. But the day quickly turned stranger. He found himself inside a cafe again. Only this time, customers kept mistaking him for the boss in a photograph on the wall. Orders started flying at him. 1 iced latte. 2 espressos. An Americano, quickly. Before he could protest, he was behind the counter, working like he actually owned the place. Hours passed. No real boss showed up. By noon, he realized something terrifying. He had accidentally been running someone else's business the entire morning. Still, he had nowhere else to go. If the owner never returned, maybe he could just count the food in bed upstairs as payment. Night fell, and that was when trouble arrived. Figures in cloaks climbed the stairs toward the cafe. Among them was Anna. They knocked. A blond man named Norn opened the door just enough to inspect them. He confirmed they were there for the procedure. Anna was brought inside, underground, to an operating room. They called it the Reformation. The Order of Ash in Chaos had a special method for creating what they referred to as a child of God. Not a true divine descendant, but a mortal transformed through mutation. The process involved injecting something known as burning blood, a red liquid capable of reshaping the human body. Norn explained with unsettling enthusiasm that mortal flesh was weak. It aged. It decayed. It died. Disgusting. But with burning blood, one could surpass humanity. Anna lay on the table without resistance. She understood why she was here. If she survived, she would become the first child of God in the Order. If she failed, she would simply be another discarded sacrifice. The needle pierced her vein. Red liquid flowed into her bloodstream. It spread rapidly, glowing beneath her skin. Her body convulsed. Then suddenly, she went still. Norn stared. Had it failed? Was she not chosen? But inside the darkness of her fading consciousness, Anna remembered one thing. The Lord of Ash had told her to live. Not to die. Live. Her lips trembled as she whispered that word. At that same moment, Shen Yu sat on his bed back in his apartment, staring at the ceiling. He told himself he didn't want anything to do with that strange church ever again. The ropes they used were sloppy. The whole organization felt amateur. Then the air shifted. A familiar voice echoed. Enemy of Ash. White fog. New summoning. He stiffened. Were they calling him again? Was it going to be that girl? For a brief second, he even smoothed his hair in anticipation. But then, everything froze. A searing pain struck his chest. Light burst from his hands. He clutched the area near his heart as magical energy wrapped around his fingers. Heat spread through his veins, gathering in his palms. He raised his hand slowly. The air shimmered. And then, flame. Real fire erupted in front of him. He screamed in panic. He was about to burn down the entire apartment. Frantically, he waved his hand. And unbelievably, the flames folded back into his palm. Gone. Silence filled the room. He stared at his hand. Then he tried again. Fire appeared. He absorbed it. Again and again. This time he shaped it. He formed letters in the air, watching glowing symbols float before him. The flames obeyed his will like clay. Excitement replaced fear. He even attempted something more complicated, creating a figure out of fire. A girl made of flame appeared before him, blinking playfully. He clutched his chest dramatically, overwhelmed by his own creation. After a while, he lay back down, exhausted but thrilled. He experimented further, molding flames into shapes and symbols. His control improved with every attempt. Eventually, his eyes drifted toward a stack of books. He wondered if the fire was truly under control. Maybe burning just one book wouldn't hurt. After all, he could always put it out. With a mischievous grin, he summoned the flames again, this time letting them touch the edge of a page. The paper ignited instantly, and he calmly added just a little more fire. Shun Yu stared at the burning book, slightly disappointed. He poured more magic into the flames, expecting a dramatic explosion. Instead, the fire flickered, shrank, and the book returned to perfect condition in his hands. Not a single page damaged. He blinked, then threw it aside. What kind of useless fire can't even burn an old book? Back in the underground chamber, a single candle burned against the wall as Norn stepped outside, sighing heavily. He muttered that the ritual hadn't been easy to arrange. Next time, perhaps they should try again with another girl. Blonde hair, blue eyes. Maybe the Lord of Ash preferred a different type. The door shut. Inside the room, Anna's voice trembled as she called out, "Doctor." Norn paused. Slowly, he turned back. She repeated herself. She had succeeded. For a moment, he just stared at her. Then his face broke into excitement. He rushed forward, grabbing her shoulders. She was alive. That meant the ritual had worked. Anna lowered her eyes. Was her survival really that unlikely? Of course she survived. The Lord of Ash had told her to live. It was necessary to inform the high priest. Preparations for the next ritual had to begin. A month passed. Rain tapped softly against the windows of the cafe as Shen Yu poured milk into a metal pitcher. Since returning from that first summoning, his boss had never come back. The shop was practically his now. He worked the espresso machine with surprising confidence. Foam swirled perfectly as he crafted a detailed design on the surface of a latte. Running a cafe wasn't the worst fate. Still, he missed home. He sipped coffee and lazily called out to Alan, his imaginary television presenter companion. The empty room offered no reply. Then the air shifted. A voice echoed again. Capture the enemy. Deception. Enemy of Ash. He looked up at the ceiling and sighed. Again? He had counted at least 7 different summoning attempts in the past month. If one day he encountered serious cultists who realized he wasn't some ancient deity, he was absolutely finished. He had heard there were universities in this world. Baden College, maybe. The thought of beautiful students wandering campus made his imagination wander far too quickly. The voice interrupted again. Endless suffering. Lord of starry ashes. Before he could react further, his body dissolved. Lightning tore across another sky. 10 minutes earlier, cloaked figures had gathered inside of the ritual chamber once more. Candles burned low. Incantations echoed. They were wealthy patrons this time. Important men seeking relics. Mysterious artifacts sealed by the church and sold only to those who could afford divine favor. Anna stood nearby. She had warned them. She had told them about the power hidden within the Lord of Ash. They hadn't listened. The high priest spread his arms dramatically, calling upon the ruler of ashes and stars. The candles blew out. The rain outside went silent. An unnatural violet light filled the chamber. Something was wrong. It was too quiet. Then a massive orange glow ignited above them. Energy spiraled downward. Anna smiled. He had come again. Shen Yu materialized in a burst of overwhelming light. To the cultists, he appeared as a towering cosmic entity, formed from shifting streams of energy. To himself, he just felt awkward. The men fell to their knees immediately. Forgive us for disturbing you. Please accept our sacrifice. Shen Yu scratched his leg nervously. He hoped none of them looked too closely. Anna stood nearby in ceremonial clothing, looking far more impressive than the first time he had seen her. The high priest shouted loudly, asking the Lord of Ash to accept the sacred offering. Why are they yelling so much? Shen Yu thought. Floating beside him, a white mask began to rise on its own. He instinctively grabbed it before it could fly away. The cultist gasped. The Lord has accepted the sacrifice. Energy pulsed outward in blinding waves. Several of the men trembled uncontrollably. Shun Yu realized something important. If he didn't control the situation now, they would keep summoning him endlessly. So he deepened his voice. He announced that he accepted their offering. And then, casually, he added that no more sacrifices would be needed for the foreseeable future. Silence fell. Anna's eyes widened. Was he truly so merciful? The high priest, however, began to shout about endless suffering and divine rule. He spoke about reshaping the world under the Lord's command. Anna suddenly interrupted. They are deceivers. They seek power for themselves. The priest snapped at her, calling her nothing more than an orphan who knew nothing. Shen Yu's expression changed. The air heated instantly. Smoke curled around his fingers. They treated her badly. Flames burst outward in a controlled explosion, igniting the chamber in terrifying illusionary fire. The cultists screamed as walls seemed to melt around them. He told them clearly. She deserved to live her own life. They had no right to decide her fate. The high priest fell flat to the floor, begging for forgiveness, swearing loyalty. Satisfied, Shun Yu declared that he required nothing more. Then the storm sounds returned. The rain could be heard again outside. He was gone. The chamber filled with ecstatic shouting. The Lord of Ash had descended twice in a single century. Norn stood confused while the high priest's eyes glowed faintly purple. He ordered everyone to prepare immediately. Anna was no longer just a sacrifice. From this day forward, she was chosen by God. She would be treated with absolute respect. She alone could interpret the will of the Lord of Ash, and she would carry out a mission greater than any before her, to help the ruler reshape the entire world. While somewhere else in a quiet room above a cafe, Shen Yu reappeared on his bed, completely unaware that he had just started a religious revolution. Anna looked at him with bright, determined eyes. She clenched her fist and declared that she truly needed his guidance. To her, this was no longer blind faith. It was devotion with purpose. A week later, the cafe door opened again. A tall man with long hair stepped inside. His presence felt heavy, almost oppressive, as if the air itself had thickened around him. He spoke under his breath about the breath of the Lord of Ash, about reality bending, about something sacred lingering in the atmosphere. Shen Yu, standing behind the counter, simply smiled like any ordinary shop owner. What would you like to drink? Black coffee. Shen Yu cheerfully replied that it would be on the house. The man watched him carefully. There was something strange about this cafe owner, something familiar, something dangerous. Shen Yu, meanwhile, was just relieved to finally have a customer. Business had been terrible lately. If things didn't improve, even a so-called Lord of Ash would end up homeless. He placed the cup in front of the man. The customer grabbed it and drank the entire thing in one gulp. It's hot, Shen Yu shouted. The man paused, then muttered that it was coffee, not poison. Behind the counter sat a large glass jar filled with paper cranes. The man explained quietly that they belonged to his daughter. She had once wanted 1,000 paper cranes. They had promised to fold them together. But she never got the chance. He buried the jar after her death because it hurt too much to look at it. Recently, he dug it back up. Shen Yu's playful expression faded. He gently touched the man's shoulder and apologized for prying. He admitted that losing someone leaves a person empty for days, unable to move, unable to function. But despair only deepens the wound. The man shook his head. Some pain never disappears. Only death could end his longing. It didn't matter whether the Lord of Ash was priest, cultist, or god. He would kill him if necessary. He introduced himself. Byron Hart. Shen Yu gave his own name and asked him to visit again. Hart stepped outside. Then suddenly Shen Yu reappeared behind him and grabbed his shoulder. Hart tensed, ready for something supernatural. You forgot to pay. Hart stared at him. Money? After paying, he walked away in silence. At least this so-called Lord of Ash didn't seem malicious. But that night he made a decision. With the help of a forbidden wizard, he would summon the Lord of Ash again. And this time he would demand his daughter back. Back in his room, Shen Yu flipped through a thick book describing the Lord of Ash in terrifying detail. Flaming wings, boundless fire, god of midnight and zero, an existence both worshipped and misunderstood. He frowned. This sounded like a fantasy novel. He skimmed other titles scattered across the table. Strange names about white fog, ancient spirits, colorless cities, primordial chaos. The deeper he read, the more he felt something tugging at his mind. He remembered how unlucky his life had always been. Failed exams, failed jobs, failed chances. Maybe that was why, months ago, he had tried something reckless. He had once discovered an ancient book among his belongings and followed a ritual called the Ceremony of Reversing Fate. The instructions were absurd. Paste yellow paper on 4 sides of a table. Write mysterious names on each sheet. Write your own name repeatedly. Spin the table. Recite the incantation. Remove 1 sheet. Wait until the next night in a cemetery. Even now, he didn't understand what he had actually done. He stared at his flame magic again. It wasn't strong enough to conquer worlds. At best, it could intimidate people. His gaze shifted to the white mask resting on the table. The high priest had grown powerful while wearing it, but in Shen Yu's hands, it was just a mask. Unless... He put it on and shouted dramatically. Nothing happened. Frustrated, he threw it to the floor. But instead of clattering normally, the mask seemed to sink slightly into the shadows. Shen Yu froze. He picked it up again and stood before a mirror. If the mask worked through shadows, maybe it required transformation. He put it on. Black mist swirled around his body. When he looked into the mirror, he saw Byron Hart's face staring back at him. Perfectly replicated. He laughed in triumph. He could change faces. He experimented further. His loose home clothes shifted into something resembling a heroic costume. He nearly teared up from excitement. Every childish fantasy he had ever imagined suddenly felt possible. Then, a voice whispered again. White fog of the opposite shore. The greatest existence of the insignificant world. Indescribable. Inexpressible. Shen Yu stiffened. Those summoning words were slightly different from before. Elsewhere, in a red brick building lit by candlelight, Byron Hart carved a pentagram into the floor. A brown-haired girl with green eyes watched silently as he chanted. April 30th, Walpurgis Night. He had waited months for this. The Lord of Ash, an ancient existence predating recorded history, was said to grant knowledge, power, even resurrection, if the sacrifice was sufficient. Happiness, however, was never guaranteed. Hart held a paper crane tightly in his hand. He didn't fear punishment. He didn't fear death. He only wanted his daughter back. Wind and white mist spiraled upward as he raised his arms. His eyes turned completely white. Strange symbols filled them. The characters began shifting, forming entire sentences as they fell from his gaze into the ritual circle. And somewhere between worlds, something began to listen. Byron Hart stares into the endless white fog and questions it aloud. Why does it wear that expression? Why does it appear as the same guest from the cafe? The coincidence unsettles him. The vast mist takes shape, forming the faint silhouette of a man. It feels deliberate, almost mocking. A kneeling girl nearby looks up in confusion, asking why the being is so enormous. As the fog thins, a colossal and terrifying outline emerges. Generations of scholars had called it the mist on the other side, but such a name clearly means nothing to something beyond the world. Byron suddenly understands his place in all of this. He is insignificant. Only someone at the very bottom could glimpse such a face without being destroyed. A message forms within the fog, confirming that his realization is mostly correct. Certain now, Byron makes his plea. He offers sacrifices worthy of the great ones and begs for a single miracle, the rebirth of his daughter. A golden seed floats above his outstretched hand. A massive golden-scaled lizard materializes overhead, radiating power. Byron declares it a first-class offering. Yet something about the exchange feels wrong. A voice in the mist calls him a foolish mortal, but accepts the sacrifice. The lizard dissolves into energy and condenses it into an egg in Byron's palm. He rejoices until it vanishes completely. Something far greater has intervened. Byron lifts his head and shouts in triumph. He believes he now holds the key to resurrection. Elsewhere, Shen watches and reflects. Byron does not seem evil. He seems desperate. But desperation is dangerous. The being in the fog does not trade in simple miracles. It rewards knowledge. Knowledge too vast for ordinary minds. In ancient writings, creatures are divided into 8 categories. The Lord of Ash belongs to one that governs procreation and feasting, exchanging blessings for offerings. The white fog, however, belongs to another, a force of revelation and destruction. It grants insight, but at a cost that can shatter reality itself. Byron realizes he must offer something greater than blood or flame. He begins reciting ancient, obscure knowledge, cosmic metaphors of great fish and birds, of transformation and transcendence. The fog responds again. The message speaks of removing fetters, of separating soul from body, of discarding worldly limitations. This is forbidden knowledge. Byron's eyes glow blue as he repeats the words. He understands now. The God does not care about resurrection. It seeks awareness, evolution, liberation from material constraints. Such knowledge could bring war or end the world entirely. When the light fades, Byron stands alone. His body begins to dissolve. Yet he believes the knowledge has been passed on. Whether this is salvation or catastrophe remains unclear. Back at the cafe, Shen rises in a dramatic pose, sensing change within himself. The time has advanced by nearly an hour, though the ritual felt brief. He reviews what he has learned. The white mist of the 23rd century was no servant of the Lord of Ash. It was something else entirely. He tests himself for new abilities. Nothing obvious manifests. The flame burns stronger. The mask still works. He stores the red seed carefully, thinking it may prove useful. That night, the box containing the seed falls open. The seed ignites, and the golden-scaled lizard reappears in his room. Shen does not wake. The creature hesitates, confused by his indifference. Then it transforms, shrinking into a blue-eyed cat that slips silently into the night. Elsewhere in Nolan, George, a Category A investigator of the Anti-Magic Bureau, receives a report. A possible supernatural incident at a cafe. Though the owner appears ordinary, protocol demands inspection. A frightened girl screams about a demon god in the city. George remains calm. Worse things than rumors exist. He examines a photograph where the faint silhouette of a blonde girl can be seen through a flash of light. Soon after, he enters the cafe and orders a latte. Shun smiles politely and begins preparing the drink, inviting him to sit. The calm before another storm settles quietly over the room. George studies Shun carefully from across the counter. On the surface, he looks like nothing more than an ordinary cafe owner. Calm, polite, harmless. Perhaps this really is a wasted investigation. Shun sets down the latte with a practiced smile. George asks a casual question. Has anything unusual happened lately? Shun answers enthusiastically, though not in the way George expects. Business has been terrible. No customers, no matter how good the weather. He quickly reminds himself to stay composed. This man must not suspect anything about his origins. George nods, thanks him, and leaves. Shen exhales in relief. Maybe he was just another customer after all. Still, something about him felt dangerous. Later that night, Shen feels a chill move through his body. The awakening of power is slower than he expected. He tries to summon it. Nothing. Frustration builds. Then suddenly, his body dissolves into transparent smoke. He can move freely in this state. After several seconds, he reforms. Thrilled. 17 seconds. Not impressive, but useful. An escape ability is better than none. The cafe door opens again. George returns. Shen nearly panics. If George had entered moments earlier, he would have seen everything. But George is not here for coffee. The atmosphere feels different, heavy, oppressive. He senses something vast lingering here, an overwhelming, demonic aura that dwarfs anything outside. Shen keeps his composure and offers another latte. When Shen steps into the back room, panic finally surfaces. Did George see through him? Should he confess? No. Lying is safer. Meanwhile, George notices a phone left behind. He scrolls through photos, cats, dozens of them. Harmless enough. Then one image stops him cold. A stone chamber, part of a ritual circle barely visible on the floor. A summoning mark. Untouchable level. He leaves without a word. Inside a stone room elsewhere, the nearly erased pentagram confirms his fears. The air is thick, with the residue of an extraterrestrial presence. Then he sees it, two red eyes burning in the fog. A golden-scaled lizard lunges. George reacts instantly, leaping off walls to evade it. He summons a blade through technique, striking again and again. The creature is powerful, second tier at least, but not invincible. After multiple strikes, it breaks through a wall and flees. George tracks it with repeated summoning techniques, though each use strains him. Even so, the creature escapes. He realizes grimly that beings of this level are far more dangerous than ordinary sorcerers. He files a confidential report. The risk level is high. 2 months pass. On a rainy day, fire energy descends from a rooftop and flies into Shen's cafe. He catches it in his hand, testing the range, roughly 300 meters. Through flame, he can hear distant voices clearly. His right hand turns to mist on command. Attack and disguise, two distinct abilities. Training is progressing. That night, lying in bed, Shen reflects on George's absence. He almost misses him. George listened carefully whenever Shen rambled. An unusual ally in a dangerous world. If Shen's identity is exposed one day, he might need that help. He closes his eyes and finds himself somewhere else. Stone pillars tower around him, glowing faintly. Ash drifts through the air. Is this the domain of the Lord of Ash? Ahead stands a girl, Anna. He approaches, confused. She appears unaware, frozen in place. He playfully squeezes her cheeks into a smile, half certain this is a dream. But the pillars begin turning to ash. The world is collapsing. He pats her head gently. They will meet again. Elsewhere, Anna jolts awake in terror. Before sleeping, she had attempted an incorporeal technique to contact the Lord of Ash. She succeeded. Now a burning red symbol marks her back, a seal. Rain pours outside. Shen stands beneath the storm, sensing something inevitable approaching. He has seen that girl 3 times now. Fate is tightening. A man in black robes waits near the cafe. Then the door opens. Anna walks in. Shen freezes. The shadow mask is far away. He turns from her quickly and forces a calm tone, asking what she would like to order. She hesitates, surprised. Inside, Shen's thoughts race. How did she find him? They have never met properly. It makes no sense. Unless it isn't coincidence at all. Shen knows he has to control the situation quickly. Anna has walked straight into his cafe, and if he handles this poorly, everything could collapse. He steps closer, smiling as if this reunion were inevitable. From Anna's perspective, she once encountered an overwhelming, godlike presence. Seeing him again in person should feel shocking, yet instead of fear, she looks confused and asks who he is. Shen plays along smoothly. He says he didn't expect her to find this place so soon and asks what happened this time. Anna smiles back, claiming nothing is wrong. He studies her carefully. No hostility, no immediate danger. That's good. After all, he did save her once. He offers her coffee, suggesting a vanilla latte if she's unsure. She agrees. As she walks away, she keeps glancing at him. There's something familiar about this man, but she can't place it. Shen, meanwhile, realizes something important. She hasn't recognized him as the being she contacted. That changes everything. Maintaining the image of a god while running a cafe every day would be impossible. So instead, he adjusts the plan. If he can't be the deity, he can be the deity's messenger. He hands her the latte and casually drapes a towel over her head, telling her to dry off. Then in a calm tone, he mentions that the Lord of Ash is always watching. At that exact moment, the door opens. George walks in. Shen immediately notices the tension in the air. There's blood on George. He shouldn't let George and Anna interact. That would complicate everything. So he quickly guides George to another room, suggesting they talk privately. George sits down and reveals his identity openly. He is an investigator from the Anti-Magic Bureau, tasked with protecting ordinary society from supernatural threats. Shen listens calmly, relieved that Anna hasn't drawn attention. George says he didn't come for coffee this time. He came for business. Shen insists on making him a cup anyway. It buys time. In the main room, Shen approaches Anna again. She explains that her order is in trouble. A silent prophecy, a deadly pursuit. She wants to summon the Lord of Ash again for protection. Shen responds in measured, reassuring tones. She must trust. She must not fear. The Lord of Ash is watching. Everything will unfold as it should. She doesn't fully understand his words, but she feels encouraged. Shen returns to George. George produces a photograph. He needs help locating a cult member who threatens national stability. The image is blurry, but Shen instantly recognizes Anna. For a split second, panic flashes through him. He can't betray her, but he also can't expose himself. So he answers carefully. He says he might only find this person by chance. George notes that the photo is too unclear to determine even the subject's gender. He thanks Shen and offers payment in antiques rather than owing a favor. Shen agrees. Better to keep things balanced. After George leaves, Shen slumps at the table. He feels like he's caught in the center of a whirlpool of fate. Elsewhere, Anna meets Byron Hart and nervously asks for increased scholarship money. She supports 8 siblings and even former classmates in the hospital. Byron sees her resolve and agrees. Later, Byron performs another ritual, calling out to the mysterious, fog-bound entity. He wants more power, more knowledge. He wants greatness. Within the fog, a familiar figure appears, Shen, wearing Byron's face. He reminds Byron that greater wishes require greater sacrifices. Byron offers magical items instead. A fortune ring that protects luck by day, but curses it at night, and a silver watch. Shen accepts them, though he privately wishes it had been cash to cover expenses. Suddenly, the ritual space shifts. A door opens. A blonde girl steps inside and calls out, "Father!" Byron freezes. It's his daughter. She speaks as though she has awakened from an impossibly long dream. She remembers someone calling to her through cold darkness. Byron is overwhelmed. The resurrection worked. Somehow, the knowledge he obtained truly brought her back. If that's possible, then becoming a god might also be possible. Shen quietly withdraws, reminding Byron that better offerings will be required next time. But something changes in Byron's eyes. If sacrificing greater things yields greater knowledge, what about sacrificing the very daughter he just regained? The girl senses his shift in mood and gently places a hand on his shoulder, asking what's wrong. And in that moment, the line between love and obsession grows dangerously thin. Byron jolts awake as if torn from a dream. Tears stream down his face before he even understands why. Without hesitation, he pulls his daughter Eve into his arms, holding her tightly as though she might vanish at any second. His voice trembles as he asks for forgiveness. Despite having done nothing wrong, he swears that he will never let anyone take her away again. Eve gently closes her eyes in his embrace and promises she will stay. But Byron's expression darkens almost immediately. His grief shifts into anger as he raises his voice toward the unseen creator, the God who governs everything, whose power blankets the world. Next time, he vows, he will offer a sacrifice worthy enough to demand an answer. Until then, he wants to be left alone with his daughter. Not far away, Shenu overhears this outburst and feels a flicker of embarrassment. Byron should not have reacted so openly. Overcome, Byron falls to his knees. A heavy fog gathers around him as he confesses that days earlier he had been invited, quietly, discreetly, to join a certain group. Their condition was simple but ominous. They required a relic capable of bringing misfortune. He had never intended to associate with cultists, yet now he fears he may have no other choice. Elsewhere, Yu feels a surge of power. A loud crack echoes through the coffee shop as a brilliant light radiates from him, filling the room. His strength has clearly grown, though he has no idea to what extent. Unfortunately, he still does not understand how to use the ring Byron gave him. His knowledge of the magical world is painfully limited. Does he need to earn money just to buy books about magic? The thought frustrates him so much that he strikes his own cheek in exasperation. Perhaps George could explain how the rings work. That seems like the most practical next step. Pulling on a long hooded sweater, he prepares to head out with Alice. Outside, heavy rain pours relentlessly. He boards a bus, recalling a photograph he took earlier. A structure near the Southern District, possibly close to a glass bridge attached to an observation deck. The city of Band is divided into 4 major districts. The Western District houses Band Fortress, a major trading hub. The Northern District contains Nolan Palace, where the Prime Minister, Parliament, and ministries operate. The East District is dominated by factories and working-class residences. The South District blends industry, commerce, and housing. Massive walls separate each region, and leaving the city requires formal government approval. Standing on the glass bridge in the rain, Yu surveys the area through binoculars. He decides to pose as a photographer while gathering information about potential targets. If Byron truly has another identity beyond being a magician, then careful observation is necessary. Nearby, he notices a figure in a blue cloak. At first, he assumes it is a man, but it turns out to be a girl, black-haired, composed, and watching the rain in silence. She seems young, perhaps a high school student. Something about her presence feels unusual. Sensing no reason to engage, Yu keeps his distance and eventually leaves. The girl, however, senses something different about him, a powerful aura, unsettling and intense. For a moment, she considers drawing a blade. Soon, a man with an umbrella approaches her. It is George. He greets her casually and asks if she is his new partner, the high school student assigned to exterminate demons. Offended, she corrects him sharply. She is not a high school student, but a first-year university student at Baden College. Though only 17, she advanced early due to her exceptional abilities. She reminds George that she is already a B-rank investigator and has 10 years of experience prior to joining the Anti-Magic Bureau. He may be her senior, but he has no right to belittle her. George laughs, teasing her again about being practically a high schooler. Then his tone shifts. The city stands on the verge of collapse. A cult plans another ritual in one of the churches, and this time the sacrifice will be something deeply precious. Hungry and unwilling to continue the conversation in the rain, she demands that George invite her to dinner. As the senior investigator with the higher salary and bonuses, it is only fair. After a moment of reluctant acceptance, George agrees and suggests a cafe he frequents. Meanwhile, Yu returns to his coffee shop. As he raises his hands, magical light pulses through his body, illuminating the room. The girl, now present with George, sees flashes of terrifying visions. A blazing magical tome, wild eyes filled with madness, in a towering structure of light. For an instant, her instincts screamed that eliminating everyone in the room might be the safest course of action. Yu approaches casually, commenting that he thought only adults were accepted into the Anti-Magic Bureau. Is she still in high school? She bristles at the remark. George only makes it worse, joking that first-year university is nearly the same thing. Once introductions are settled, George shifts to business. He reminds Yu that he previously asked him to locate someone. Yu calmly replies that discussions of that nature follow an old rule. First, 2 cups of coffee must be ordered. Only then can negotiations begin. George sighs but agrees. As usual, he orders a latte. Lynn studied the cafe menu with a slight frown. Then suddenly her eyes sparkled. Without hesitation, she began listing her order. Mousse cake, chicken sandwich, tiramisu, milk cake, freshly baked egg tarts, donuts, and macarons, 2 servings of each. Yu blinked in surprise. That was not an order. That was a banquet. When he asked what kind of coffee she preferred, Lynn sighed dramatically and said she was quite particular about coffee, so he could simply choose something that suited her. Intrigued, he replied that he would prepare something special, something she would absolutely love. Meanwhile, George stared at the growing pile of desserts and asked the obvious question, why order so much if she could not possibly eat it all? Lynn calmly explained that she planned to take the leftovers with her. George pressed further. If they ordered this much at a normal cafe, how expensive would it be? She reminded him that he was the one treating her. When he fell silent, she continued her assault. As an A-rank investigator, his salary surpassed 99% of the population. Housing, medical care, training, and travel were all covered. Additional missions meant additional bonuses. Compared to that, she was practically underfunded. George lowered his gaze. Investigators might be well compensated, he said quietly, but few high-ranking ones survived long enough to enjoy retirement. Still, he could not resist asking why a B-rank investigator looked so financially desperate. Lynn closed her eyes and admitted she had many expenses. Moments later, she began eating at astonishing speed. While George watched in stunned silence, he turned back to business. He did not know whether you had made progress, but it was clear something serious threatened the city, an order intended to sacrifice the entire Korra band. If they succeeded, no one could predict what the summoned being would do, even if it bore no ill will. How would ordinary citizens react to such an existence appearing before them? Yu's smile faded. If a city were sacrificed, the ritual would expose everything. The entire world would know. He recalled something Anna had mentioned about a new sacrifice. But surely the Order of Ash and Chaos alone could not accomplish something so massive. Anna had also mentioned another group, the Silent Tongue. Did George know about them? The question visibly unsettled him. He admitted that the Silent Tongue had attacked investigators before, causing heavy losses. Their objectives remained unclear. If they were not involved in the city-scale ritual, perhaps they could be dealt with later. Then George placed a small folding box on the table. He had owed you a favor, but perhaps something tangible would be better. You frowned. If he accepted it, he would be obligated to assist in finding Dana. For now, George should remain at home. Even if you could not directly help, he could at least confirm that the girl in the photographs was not malicious. There was a serious conflict between the Order of Ash and Chaos and the Silent Tongue. That information was free. George stood, understanding the message. He thanked him sincerely. When he told Lynn they were leaving, she protested. She had not finished eating. You smiled apologetically and informed her that the cafe did not offer takeout services. Horrified, she hurried to finish every remaining bite. Even George looked alarmed at the speed of her final assault on the plates. Later, you stepped back into the rain. If he passed through this district, he would reach the Central Library, home to roughly 750,000 books. He lacked a student card, but that was hardly an obstacle. Mist could pass through locked spaces, and protective glass meant little against fog. Using another face, he slipped inside. Among the shelves, he quickly found what he needed. He began with records of the Order of Ash and Chaos. In ancient times, they had successfully summoned the Lord of Ash. The earth had trembled, oceans raged, and disasters spread across the world. They once rose to terrifying power, overthrowing kings, seizing armies, claiming wealth and dominion. History remembered that era as a second plague. But their dominance did not last. The Order of the Star Crown crushed them, forcing the remnants underground. Another century-old text spoke of the Silent Tongue. Many cults thrived on divine gifts, yet greed inevitably divided them. The Silent Tongue's deity was described as Winter, an extraterrestrial god symbolizing silence, endings, and extinction. Their rituals required the victim to already be dead before sacrifice, ensuring peace and quiet. But what would happen to the soul? And what if an entire city were offered? The thought chilled him. Suddenly, someone addressed him as Arthur and asked whether he had taken sick leave. Arthur. So that was the name of the student whose face he wore. He turned and found Byron standing there. Thinking quickly, he claimed he was feeling unwell and should head home. Byron insisted on accompanying him. It was unwise to be out in such heavy rain with a fever. As they walked, Byron noticed the book in his hand, The Quiet Tongue. He casually asked whether Arthur had taken an interest in science fiction. You replied that although he knew it was fiction, the story felt strangely real. Byron remarked that his performance in math had declined lately. You placed the book back and hurried away, claiming he felt worse. Byron followed. Outside, rain poured relentlessly. Byron opened an umbrella. You, wrapped in a raincoat, studied him carefully. Was his sensitivity to cold a side effect of arcane research? A price paid for relic use? He mentioned that he had read several mystical texts, including one about the Silent Tongue and their strange rituals. Byron answered flatly. The atmosphere shifted. Then Byron revealed something unsettling. He had just checked the office. Arthur was at home. A slip of paper flashed with light as Byron demonstrated a subtle technique. He explained calmly that he was skilled in certain secret arts that work best on ordinary, powerless individuals. He had already ensured no one would interfere. Now there were only two questions. Who are you? And why are you here? Rain hammered down around them as silence stretched between teacher and imposter. Byron snapped his fingers. The rain froze. Each droplet hung motionless in the air, suspended like crystal beads in an invisible web. Time itself seemed to hesitate. A radiant beam of light ignited above Byron's head, expanding into a vast, magic circle that illuminated the entire street. Well, Byron asked calmly, have you figured it out? A red sigil flared across Yu's hand. His breath caught. The air was thick, dense with something unmistakable. White fog, the aura of the other shore. An unbearable brilliance burned in front of his eyes as Byron gritted his teeth. He knew this presence. When he once tried to kill the Lord of Ash, he had felt only half that divine pressure. Half the Lord of Ash, half the white mist. But this was complete. Sparks scattered through the frozen world. Then the rain resumed. Byron exhaled slowly. He admitted he had temporarily switched allegiances, posing as an investigator from the Anti-Magic Bureau to draw him out. It had not been done with malice. You tilted his head slightly as his body began dissolving into drifting strands of mist. Did you just say, he asked quietly, that an extraterrestrial god's aura is emanating from me? Understanding struck him like lightning. Every time he used the fog spell, he revealed himself. George must have sensed it. Anna, too, even the girl on the observation deck. He was not merely a magician. He was one of the vessels of a supreme god. Byron's voice turned strained. He had joined the Order of the Silent Tongue for one reason only. The artifacts he received would be offered as sacrifice to a higher being. In exchange, he wanted the watching to stop. The divine gaze that lingered over his daughter. He no longer needed spells. He needed protection. You nodded slowly. That explained everything. In that case, he said, eyes glowing faintly, tell me everything you know about the Silent Tongue. Byron hesitated. Why would a god care about such matters? The light in Yu's eyes intensified. Byron lowered his head. I understand. They parted ways without another word. As Byron walked through the rain, he murmured an apology to an old friend. Pride meant nothing now. Eve's safety outweighed everything. Elsewhere, you waited. George had not visited the cafe in days. That alone was troubling. The Silent Tongue sacrificed their members before initiation. George needed to know. Anna, too. Then Anna herself arrived with urgent news. The ritual would happen again soon. She mentioned something about a dark fruit, but offered no explanation. Not long after, a blue-eyed girl approached the counter, calling out to him. She spoke of a friend, someone only he supposedly knew. You deflected gently, encouraging her to resolve the matter directly. It was late. She should go home. After she left, he checked the time. The ritual should have begun. Midnight passed. Nothing. Morning came. Something was wrong. In a hidden gathering place, hooded figures surrounded a corpse. Dr. Norn lay lifeless. Whispers spread in panic. The king demanded answers. One cultist stammered that the doctor had murdered members of the Silent Tongue before dying himself. The king's gaze lingered on Anna. Despite her youth, her composure was cold, unnervingly so. He raised his voice, proclaiming the supremacy of the Lord of Ash. Their order would reclaim its former glory. Tonight marked their resurgence. Then the high priest suddenly convulsed. An invisible force crushed his throat. He collapsed, dead before he hit the floor. Chaos erupted. The king barked orders. They would proceed. The Silent Tongue lacked divine blessing. There would be no consequences. A guard burst in. Half the sentries were dead, the rest missing. They were under attack. The king ordered immediate evacuation toward the Tabu River. Anna was to come with him. Tonight would be her first true lesson. They would search for the god's messenger. Anna hesitated. It was raining heavily outside. Why, then, was it so quiet here? Blinding flashes of light exploded through the building. Walls shattered. Hooded figures fell screaming. Pain tore through her chest. Her vision blurred. In the darkness of her mind, she heard it. Lord of Ash, find the ring. She woke beneath rubble. Her legs were pinned under stone slabs, bones fractured, blood soaking her clothes. Somehow she was still alive, perhaps saved by relentless physical training. She forced herself to move. Each step was agony. Broken debris collapsed around her as she dragged herself free. Nearby, she saw a severed hand. The high priest, but his body was gone. Her back burned with a searing mark. She had to survive. She had to find the messenger. Outside, screams filled the rain-soaked streets. Back at the cafe, you waited in the garden, unease gnawing at him. If the Anti-Magic Bureau had intervened, what had they done to Anna? A knock came at the door. He opened it, only to find a stray cat. Silence returned. It was nearly 4 in the morning. Waiting any longer was pointless. If this involved the Bureau, he would contact George tomorrow. For now, there was nothing left to do but rest, though the storm in the city was far from over. Anna reached the cafe door just as dawn began to bleed into the sky. Her long hair stood on end from the lingering static of magic. On the rooftop above, cloaked figures gathered in silence. Among them stood a man with vivid green eyes, holding a sword that glowed like condensed sunlight. "We move quickly," he ordered. "The sun is rising. Anyone who dares observe the order of the Silent Tongue declares war." Their demands had already been made. Betrayal of the supreme god would not be tolerated. Anna lay in the rain, barely conscious. A stray cat padded toward her and meowed softly. One of the cloaked men glanced down. "It's kind of cute," he muttered. "Focus," another snapped. "We have a mission." The cat's ears twitched. At that moment, the cafe door began to glow with blinding light. The hooded figures froze. Smoke curled into the air, pierced by radiant beams. The man with green eyes stiffened. "There are 2 extraterrestrial auras," he said slowly, "both powerful." The ground split. Something enormous emerged. A monstrous limb slammed into the earth, followed by a towering, distorted form that seemed half hidden by the rain itself. The cultist trembled. "One of the Lord of Ash's pets," someone whispered. "Scatter!" another shouted. Too late. One man barely began to speak before the creature appeared behind him. A flash. Blood sprayed across the rain-soaked ground. Another tried to flee. Transparent claws tore him apart in an instant. A third turned to run in the opposite direction, believing he had found an opening. The monster was already there. He split in half before he could scream. One survivor crouched behind a wall, gasping. Running was useless. The creature was too fast. A glowing eye opened inches from his face. His scream echoed into the storm. Anna stirred. Rain soaked her clothes. Heat burned beneath her skin. She opened her eyes just as the monster's fanged maw loomed over her. "It's that monster!" She scrambled backward against the wall, raising her trembling hand. "Don't come closer!" the creature roared. A sigil ignited within its form. Instinct took over. Anna's palm erupted with brilliant flame. The fire did not behave like ordinary fire. It roared golden, radiant, ancient. It devoured the monster in seconds. She stared at the fading embers, breath shaking. In the world of the Lord of Ash, there exists a golden fire capable of burning entire worlds. Since humanity's dawn, more than 20 worlds had already fallen to it. That fire answered her. Flames spiraled outward in blinding streams of energy. She clenched her jaw. "I have to hold on." But as the blaze subsided, a familiar paw stepped into view. The monster stood again. It regarded her differently now. Not as prey, as something chosen. She was the Overlord of Ash's selected vessel, and she was badly injured. If not rescued soon, she would die. The cat stepped forward, glowing faintly, locking eyes with her. Everything blurred. Inside the cafe, you heard the distant roar. He threw open the door. A cat sat there, meowing innocently. He frowned. That was not the sound he heard. Then he saw her. Anna slumped against the wall, blood mixing with rain. He rushed to her side. "So the ritual failed," he muttered. Her wounds were severe, broken bones, internal damage. She was burning with fever. "You'll be fine," he told her quietly. "I'll save you." He glanced at the cat. "If you see that monster again, let me know." The cat stared at him. Inside, he carefully removed her soaked clothes to treat her injuries, repeating under his breath that he was doing this only to save her. Nothing else. Her condition came first. Something unusual caught his attention. The wounds were already beginning to close. By morning, her skin showed no trace of injury. Anna woke beneath a blanket. She remembered collapsing near the cafe, the messenger waiting there. She remembered clinging to him in half-conscious desperation. Her shoulder was bare where her sweater had slipped. The wounds were gone. He had healed her. She sat up slowly. So this was where the god's messenger lived, disguised as an ordinary man. In the next room, you sat at the table, staring out the window. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Anna approached quietly and thanked him. He turned. "You're awake? Hungry?" She studied him carefully. "Are you all right?" "I didn't sleep," he replied simply. "That's all." She walked past him, mind racing. The god's messenger also bleeds, also tires, also hides secrets. He finished his food with mechanical calm. All night he had stood guard, afraid the monster might return. Standing still, forcing himself not to fall asleep, had drained him more than any battle could have. Outside, the rain had stopped. But the city was far from safe. Before dawn, he rushed back to the library, chasing the meaning behind the clue Byron had left him. Convinced he finally understood the bigger picture, he went straight to the Anti-Magic Bureau to report the Order of the Quiet Tongue. The employees dismissed him at first, insisting that they were an ordinary office with nothing supernatural about them. They spoke so confidently that he almost believed he had made a mistake. Only when they realized he was President George and sober did they take him seriously. When he returned home, exhaustion hit him. He prepared breakfast for Anna, but nearly fainted from fatigue. Deciding he would rest soon, he asked her to tell him everything about the previous night. She stood with dramatic seriousness before he gently teased her into relaxing and eating while she spoke. Anna recounted her visit to the church in the high priest's troubling words. The order's affairs were far more complex than they appeared. Though the high priest claimed he was trying to correct things, the order could not simply vanish. It funded orphanages and supported countless lives. Ending the sacrifices and persecution would not be simple. Anna admitted she did not fully understand everything yet, but she wanted to try. The world looks simple from a distance, she said, but in truth it demanded strength and faith. He listened with quiet pride. She had changed quickly, braver, more thoughtful, maturing at an astonishing pace. He even wondered, half seriously, whether there was something unusual about her origins. Their moment was interrupted when a cat approached the table. Anna delighted in its cuteness, and together they named it Kola. But when she reached out to touch it, the creature suddenly growled and transformed into something monstrous. She recoiled in fear. In seconds, however, it was sitting innocently at a distance again, wide-eyed and harmless. Though shaken, Anna realized this was the messenger's pet. It must know her true nature and meant her no harm. When it leapt at her again, she clung to him instead, insisting she wanted to go to his room. Embarrassed but gentle, he agreed. They could read together. Elsewhere, under thick clouds, George walked the streets, confident he now understood the entire situation. To him, the people of the city were pieces on a board, easily directed. Su Lin soon joined him, munching on a cookie and urging him to stop complaining and share what he had discovered in the library. He explained that the Order of the Quiet Tongue had been losing power for some time. Tonight, they would meet someone important. At a cafe with warm lighting and calm atmosphere, Su Lin studied the menu while George reflected. The opposition was dangerous. If they were bold enough to attack the Anti-Magic Bureau, they were prepared for anything. They wanted his personal involvement in their next operation. Shanu refused outright. He would not risk his life for them. A small flame flickered in his hand, and a fiery aura flared around him. His eyes burned with anger as he accused them of crossing the line. Su Lin reacted violently to the surge of energy, forcing George to apologize and withdraw. The tension barely subsided before they left. Later, Anna reappeared and asked if the guests were gone. He assured her they were. Something stirred uneasily beneath his shirt, a premonition. More deaths were coming. He didn't know where or when, but he felt events unfolding exactly as he had anticipated. Rain poured over the industrial district that night. In the shadows between factories, figures in formal suits clashed with men in dark blue robes. Steel and power met beneath the storm. One robed fighter shouted above the downpour, "The leader must die. Without him, the others would never rise again." The ambush was supposed to be flawless. George W. cut through the rain with a sweep of his sword. Eyes sharp as lightning split the sky. The cultists had struck just after the investigators left the building, too precise to be coincidence. They had cloaked themselves in invisibility, unleashed foreign monstrosities, and timed everything perfectly. There was only one explanation. Someone inside had betrayed them. He activated his headset and issued clipped orders. 2 hours at most before the concealment technique collapsed. They needed to disrupt the summoning site and scatter the cultists before momentum tipped beyond recovery. One thought lingered beneath his composure. Where was Yale Willard hiding? Rain hammered the asphalt. Red-eyed creatures emerged from the downpour like nightmares made flesh. Su Lin moved first. She streaked forward, blade flashing. One monster lost a limb mid-lunge. When she landed, she raised her sword and uttered a single command. The creature convulsed and collapsed as a portal swallowed it, energy dissolving into vapor and slime. The weapon she carried was devastating, but it demanded payment. With every use, a bone from her body vanished. Pain knifed through her ribs. She pressed on. A gunshot cracked the air. A bullet struck her chest, but the enhanced blood engineered by the Anti-Magic Bureau dulled the damage. She advanced toward the shooter, who drew a long blade to meet her. Steel rang once as they crossed paths. Then she pivoted sharply, tore his arm free in one brutal motion, and drove her sword through his back. From the dying man's mouth, a grotesque caterpillar burst forth, enormous and writhing. She commanded it to fall. It resisted. She shouted again, fury sharpening her voice. The thing finally crashed to the soaked pavement. Breathing hard, she injected K230, an antidote that sealed wounds with unnatural speed. By the time George approached with agents in black sunglasses, she was already steady. She insisted she had handled the monsters. They needed to find the priest. George watched her with a knowing expression. She preferred to fight alone, but they were partners. She dismissed the conversation. Time was bleeding away. Somewhere else in the city, the only C-rank investigator was absent. If the true monster emerged, they would be outmatched. George had already decided. If the chance came, he would kill Yale Willard himself. At the fortified industrial complex, Willard raised black stones and a silver cross toward the heavens. The storm swirled as if answering him. He spoke reverently of a guide in the wilderness, a singer of truth, a bringer of unbreakable serenity, the God of peace. He offered the cross, drawn from the depths of the void, and begged for eternal rest for all mortals. Light tore open the sky. A portal bloomed above the city, flooding the streets with unbearable radiance. Agents fell to their knees, hands clamped over their ears. Only George and Su Lin could move within the crushing pressure of the summoning. Wooden silhouettes formed along the portal's rim, shapes of unknown horrors straining to enter. Elsewhere in a softly lit cafe, the cat sensed it first. Something vast had answered the call. Anna looked up, wondering if the messenger had returned. The cat bolted. Back at the portal, George spotted Willard through the glare. A small spectral blade formed in his palm, the third sword technique. He hurled it. The blade pierced Willard clean through, blood bursting outward. Willard did not fall. Even that strike could not kill him. Distance remained a problem. A second technique might finish the job, but Willard could deflect it. Su Lin reached for another dagger, but George stopped her. They were too late. Then the sound vanished. Above them, a figure materialized on a conjured platform, blue suit, mask gleaming beneath divine light. It was Shenu, cloaked in the guise of the very deity described in the forbidden texts. He hovered awkwardly at first, then steadied himself as magic supported his footing. The performance had begun. Willard knelt before him, repeating his plea for eternal peace. Shenu listened. He remembered what the book had said. The God of peace granted not death, but submission. Devotees would lose desire, emotion, ambition, no pain, no joy, no love, only existence under divine will. Was that mercy or annihilation of the soul? A silver cross manifested before him. As the summoned God, he accepted the offering. It now belonged to him. Then he denied their request. Horror spread across Willard's face. Magic poured from Shenu's body, heavier than before. The cultists had harmed those under his watch. They had crossed a line. His eyes burned red. And in a voice colder than the storm, he began to speak. He had two reasons. First, they hurt Anna. Second, they threatened the entire city. Because of that, he refused to grant them eternal rest. Willard heard those words, and something inside him broke. He kept asking why, over and over again, as if he could not understand how the great God he believed in had abandoned him. His body aged rapidly, his strength fading in seconds. The platform beneath his feet dissolved into thin air, and he dropped like a stone from the sky. Shen Yu watched him fall without emotion. If he died, so be it. He had never liked him anyway. Raindrops hovered in the air around him. Time itself seemed frozen. Shen Yu casually played with a droplet and muttered that he might as well wait a little longer. For a moment, it truly felt like time had stopped. From a distant building came Willard's desperate scream. The so-called great God of peace had rejected him, refused him, denied him eternal peace. Shen Yu calmly concluded that their shelter must have been below. His time was over. When everything settled, George stood silently with his head lowered. The silent-tongued cultists had been wrong. Their selfish attempt to summon an extraterrestrial god and grant eternal peace to the city had ended in complete failure. George put on his headphones and announced the truth. The extraterrestrial god had disappeared. All cult members must be captured immediately. Meanwhile, Shen Yu offered to deal with the high priest himself. If the man survived, he would be badly wounded. Walking down the street, he soon spotted someone leaning against a wall. Yale Willard, or so he thought. When Shen Yu approached and touched him, he realized something was off. This wasn't Yale at all. Back at the cafe, he sat quietly thinking. The information he had received earlier had been false. A cat sat across from him, staring as if it had been awake all night. Shen Yu smiled faintly and apologized to it for forgetting about it during all the chaos. The cat immediately leapt into his arms, meowing loudly. He sighed. Maybe he could at least buy it better food later. Anna soon entered the room. It was time for her to leave. The order was looking for her again. Somehow the high priest had survived. Shen Yu listened quietly. The order never truly needed her. Not even the children did. For him, the only important thing was that he could finally sleep in his own bed again. Anna hesitated, but he told her she could stay if she wanted. She seemed relieved. Then he asked about the name of the order and what she planned to do next. Her answer was firm. She would speak with the high priest and restructure the entire organization, change its goals, hear the voices of its members. Shen Yu approved. It was the right decision. Before leaving, Anna bowed deeply. She thanked him for saving her. In her heart, she swore to tell the world about him, about how strong and wise he truly was. The next morning, a silver cross fell to the floor. Shen Yu stepped on it accidentally and picked it up, frustrated. He still didn't understand how to use it properly. But something had changed after the battle. He felt energy gathering in his left hand. Then it clicked. He could freeze things. Testing the ability, he pointed at a cup of coffee that was about to fall. Instantly, it froze midair. The table stopped. The liquid hung suspended. It worked, but only for a few seconds. The cup crashed down once the effect ended. The cat jumped at him playfully. Shun Yu instinctively pointed at it and activated the power. The cat froze mid-leap and flew past him into the glass. Crash! The cat glared at him angrily and attacked again. Each time it leapt, he froze it. Each time it smashed into something else. Eventually, he grabbed it and sighed. Enough. At this rate, the furniture would not survive. After more testing, he understood the rules of his new ability. It lasts 5 seconds. It only works on visible, physical objects. It affects entire objects, not parts. His left hand must directly point at the target. Distance doesn't matter, but nothing can block the path. And he cannot refreeze something until the previous effect ends. While experimenting, he ended up covered in bruises from flying books and falling objects. That was when the door suddenly opened. A brown-haired girl with blue eyes stepped inside and asked if Master Shen was present. Without thinking, he almost froze her too. Instead, he quickly fixed his messy hair and invited her to sit. He offered coffee. An hour later, she left in tears, thanking him repeatedly before running away. Shun Yu stood there thinking deeply. Even when frozen, she had somehow noticed small changes around her. If someone had strong enough perception, they could detect the distortion. The cat walked up beside him. Shun Yu rested his chin on his hand. The key was intelligence, strategy. Later, reporters entered the cafe, asking for a comment. Shun Yu agreed calmly, but kept a careful watch on them. Then he noticed Su Lin and George arriving with bags full of food. Apparently, they planned to spend a lot today. They sat down. Shun Yu asked what they would drink. George ordered a latte. Su Lin said she wanted to try something new. When Shun Yu asked about food, she claimed she wasn't hungry. He simply smiled at her in a way that made her nervous. Then he went to prepare the coffee. As he walked away, George quietly reminded Su Lin of something important. Working with Master Shen was far more exhausting than fighting the order itself. The cafe grew quiet after Shun Yu stepped away to prepare the drinks. Su Lin let out a slow breath. She finally understood why he always pushed her to the front lines. Whenever something dangerous had to be handled, he sent her first, not to steal her glory, but to give it to her. If she officially took office, she would start as a B-rank ranger. As long as she stayed alive, A rank would eventually be guaranteed. All she needed was more experience. Shen Yu wasn't using her, he was training her. She didn't look at him when she thanked him. Instead, she asked about the arrests. Had they captured all the order members? What did it feel like? During the first interrogation, memories of her father surfaced. George immediately interrupted, telling her that her father's past had nothing to do with her. But she disagreed. She had spent years compensating the victims of his mistakes. She believed she owed them that much. Before the conversation could go deeper, she cut it off. She didn't want to talk about it anymore. Shen Yu quietly placed the coffee down and shifted the topic. Yale Willard. George's expression changed. He explained that Willard had once been a priest of the quiet tongue, a dangerous man. Long ago, George, Willard, and another companion had formed a team to search for magical relics scattered across the world. Back then, George had been young. Willard, however, was already over 100 years old. Naturally, he became their leader. They found countless treasures. Rumors spread about their exploits. But eventually, ambitions split them apart. Each chose a different path. George described Willard as a man whose heart was filled with madness. On the outside, he appeared calm and rational. But inside, he studied terrifying and foolish things that should never have been touched. Shun Yu asked a simple question. Is he strong? George smiled faintly. Strength was relative. In fact, Willard had once been his teacher, the one who taught him combat techniques and battlefield instincts. Su Lin asked again, if she ever faced Willard directly, what should she do? George answered without hesitation, run. Then he added something worse. Willard could change his appearance. Even if Shun Yu encountered him face to face, there was no guarantee he would recognize him. George had come for clarification. The priest who ran the quiet tongue recently, was that really Willard? Or was there a mistake in the reports? Shun Yu thought carefully. Byron had loved his daughter deeply. Why would he lie? Unless there was something else at play. Perhaps the order had more than one priest operating in parallel. That possibility changed everything. George bowed slightly in gratitude. This information could help them tremendously. Shun Yu looked embarrassed and waved it off. They were just friends. Later, on an empty street, George warned Su Lin to be more careful. He had already arranged things inside the Anti-Magic Bureau. Soon they would stop monitoring him. But there was something else. Her father. George knew the details. Her father had once been a hero who fought monsters. But to save her mother, he chose the wrong path. He joined the Order. In doing so, he harmed many people. Su Lin had been paying for those sins ever since. George told her firmly that she and her father were different people. She did not need to carry his burden. That only made her angry. They had known each other for only a few days. He had no right to lecture her. They were partners, not family. She walked past him without looking back. George rubbed his temple. He had done it again. He always pushed too far. That evening, dark clouds filled the sky. Rain began to fall. George sat alone in front of the television, replaying the conversation in his mind. Only someone truly close could help her heal. Maybe the Bureau had paired them intentionally, hoping sympathy would form. On the screen, a program discussed relics and blade techniques. The second blade technique shortened lifespan, but could be corrected. The first blade technique was worse. It slowly erased memories of loved ones. You would remember that you once had a wife or child, but the emotional connection would fade. Even divine intervention could not fully restore it. George suddenly wondered, was Shun Yu affected by something similar? Shun Yu had once smiled and said they were just friends. Was that truly how he felt? Or had he simply become someone who could never grow attached? Before George could sink deeper into thought, a voice sounded through his earpiece. They had confirmed it. Yale Willard had been right in front of them all along. George immediately stood up, informed headquarters. Willard was with him. At that same moment, Shun Yu sat in his cafe, holding Cola the cat. A zombie was approaching. It didn't look like a kidnapper, but its mouth split open, revealing 6 gray tentacles that shot forward. Shun Yu dissolved into mist. The tentacles passed through empty air. He reformed, pointed his left hand, and activated his ability. Freeze. The zombie locked in place. 5 seconds. If it attacked again, he would have to vanish quickly. But it didn't. Instead, the creature slowly sat against the wall and began to cry. Shun Yu entered his mist form again and examined it closely. The zombie's aura carried traces of an extraterrestrial god's corruption. It had been attacked from the inside. Cola trembled slightly, but Shun Yu kept the cat at a distance. The zombie lowered its head. Then it ended its own life. Shun Yu's eyes narrowed. If they dared to attack him this way, would they also target George and Su Lin? Elsewhere, rain poured heavily. George faced Yale Willard inside the office. He demanded to know how he had bypassed security for years without detection. Willard answered calmly. It was a gift from the god he served, a distortion relic that bent space itself. Any attack trajectory could be pulled off course. In short, George's tools were nearly useless. George replied coldly that he didn't care what Willard planned to do with his documents. He was simply annoyed. Without warning, Willard lunged. A small blade flashed in his hand. George realized the street below was probably filled with cultists. Staying inside was suicide. He leapt from the balcony. Below, robed figures surrounded a glowing pentagram. Energy attacks shot toward him. George deployed his defensive zone mid-air, deflecting the blasts. Then he extended his blade, channeling power into it. The weapon disappeared and reappeared directly among the cultists. One of them shouted to capture him alive. George moved rapidly, eliminating one enemy and retrieving his dagger. But he could feel it. He had already burned too much energy. Then Willard's voice echoed through the rain. You cannot escape. George wiped the rain from his face and looked straight at Willard. You came here to kill me, he said calmly, and you think I'll just let you walk away? Willard smiled with lazy amusement. George answered anyway. Nothing is impossible. That bored expression didn't disappear. Instead, Willard suddenly raised his voice, fury slipping through the cracks. Byron had betrayed him. The real blame, he claimed, belonged to those who trusted Byron, those who gave him credit, and now only one obstacle remained alive. For his grand extermination plan, he had demanded Byron Hart's revival. Only a high-class sorcerer like her could help him destroy everything. But she betrayed him before the ritual was complete. George frowned. Why shout so loudly? Was he trying to alert the entire Anti-Magic Bureau? Willard only smiled wider. He had originally planned to deal with George after the sacrifice, but betrayal had forced his hand. Maybe Byron didn't value her daughter's life as much as George believed. George cut him off sharply. Her daughter is everything to her. Willard tilted his head. Or maybe George was just naive. Then he charged. Steel collided in a burst of sparks. George shouted toward a nearby ally, ordering him to warn Sulin. Tell her not to search for that person. Tell her to contact the Bureau immediately. She should live normally. Read books, attend classes, stay away from this nightmare. Willard mocked him mid-strike. Was he already preparing his final message? Did he fear his partner would follow his path? George replied through clenched teeth. If she became an A-rank investigator, a long and peaceful life would be impossible. Willard's eyes widened with manic delight. Exactly. Behind him, figures in blue robes emerged silently. Their pentagrams remained dark, waiting. Far away in the quiet glow of his cafe, Shen Yu held a cup in his hand. He stared at it for a long time. Too much had happened in just a few days. A girl had cried in front of him earlier, yet he could barely remember her face. Running a cafe was supposed to be simple. Customers came in, shared their burdens, left lighter than before. That was the peaceful life he once wanted. But now magic, relics, and extraterrestrial gods had tangled him into this world. Still, maybe it wasn't entirely bad. He had Anna, he had new acquaintances, even Su Lin and Byron, people who needed him. Without connections, a person sinks into loneliness. The cafe door opened. Su Lin stood there. He's dead, she said quietly. Shen Yu understood instantly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. George, that persistent man who chased danger, who protected the city tirelessly, was gone. Shen Yu asked about the quiet tongue investigation. The Bureau confirmed it. No errors this time. Su Lin's eyes hardened. She was prepared to face any punishment for breaking protocol. But first, revenge. Behind Shen Yu, flames burst to life, revealing two glowing pairs of eyes in the darkness. Tell me everything, he said. That night, heavy clouds swallowed the sky. The port lay silent. Rain stopped as Shen Yu lifted his hand. Beyond the docks stretched the hopeless sea, a name given to the endless waters of this world. The farther you traveled from land, the more the sky itself seemed to vanish beyond the horizon. In this world, survival meant staying close to others. Isolation meant disappearance. Su Lin had already traced Willard's possible escape route. 17 kilometers southeast led to Ban Harbor. From there, ships sailed into the dark sea. The Bureau had deployed all its forces. Even without her involvement, Willard's chances were slim. But slim wasn't enough. She wanted zero chance. Shen Yu listened carefully. He cannot escape punishment, he said softly. Then his body dissolved into mist. White fog drifted across rooftops as he stepped into another layer of reality. If he released the aura of an extraterrestrial god strongly enough, Willard would be drawn to it like a moth to flame. Elsewhere, Willard stood beneath a sky of black clouds. He muttered to himself. He needed to leave Nolan temporarily, hide in another country for years. No, decades, maybe even a century. 100 years ago, he received the blessing of the almighty bow of peace. He was no longer an ordinary mortal. In a sense, he was immortal. If he sealed himself away long enough, everything would calm down again. Then he paused. What is this aura? He followed it into an abandoned warehouse. Inside, a figure stood with his back turned. You're finally here, the man said. He turned around. George. Willard staggered. Impossible. Black fog seeped from George's form, and Shen Yu emerged in his place, smiling faintly. You were thinking about me, Shen Yu said calmly, the messenger of the god of peace. Willard's breath trembled. Shen Yu stepped behind him in an instant. It's not enough, he murmured. You're close, but not enough. Willard spun around, confused. How did he move so fast? Shen Yu tilted his head slightly. You must sacrifice your soul. Then he vanished. You don't have time, his voice echoed. Your enemies are coming. Moments later, the Anti-Magic Bureau detected the surge of divine aura. A blonde doctor confirmed it immediately. This was the same presence from before. A massive glowing circle with intricate patterns appeared in the sky. There, it's Willard, someone shouted. Willard laughed wildly. They were too late. He would achieve eternal rest soon. Only by abandoning attachment could one attain true peace. These mortals were trapped by love and hesitation. They could never understand sacrifice. Then, silence. Everything froze. Willard, the Bureau agents, even the air itself. Shen Yu descended from above wearing a suit and mask suspended in the dark sky. Willard stared at him with trembling reverence. The god of peace. Shun Yu felt a quiet satisfaction. The plan was unfolding perfectly. Lure him in, prevent escape, force him into soul sacrifice, and then crush him with disappointment. Willard raised his arms like a prophet. He called Shun Yu a guide in the wilderness, a singer of truth, a bringer of indestructible serenity. He offered his soul as tribute, pulled from the depths of the void. He asked for only one thing: grant eternal peace to these mortals. Shun Yu looked down at him. I refuse to grant you eternal peace, he said calmly, but I accept your gift. Shun Yu did not hesitate. The moment Yale Willard offered his soul, he accepted it. Blue streams of energy burst from Willard's chest as his soul was forcibly extracted. His eyes turned hollow. Confusion replaced fanatic devotion. He had been deceived. His trembling hand reached towards Shun Yu one last time, perhaps to curse him, perhaps to beg. But Shun Yu simply closed his fingers around the fading light and, almost mockingly, murmured a wish for George to rest peacefully. Willard collapsed. The divine circle above shattered. The glow vanished. A massive hole tore through the warehouse ceiling, and Willard's lifeless body lay crushed beneath broken concrete. Members of the Anti-Magic Bureau stared in shock. Had he truly achieved eternal peace? Shun Yu thought otherwise. On the day George supposedly died, Shun Yu sat across from Su Lin and handed her a folded piece of paper. Go to this villa, he told her. Find a man named Byron. Tell him this is a request from the fog and the quiet tongue. He may know a way to bring George back. Su Lin froze. Resurrection was forbidden. Only extraterrestrial gods could perform such miracles. And yet Shun Yu spoke of it as if it were ordinary. He looked at her sharply. Are you afraid, or do you simply not want to? She reminded him that the Bureau strictly prohibited resurrection techniques. The punishment for using one was nearly equal to summoning an extraterrestrial god. Her fist tightened. It wasn't about rules. She simply could not tolerate evil winning. Finally, she lifted her head and declared that she would find Byron. If there was even the smallest chance to bring George back, she would take it. Shun Yu smiled faintly. He couldn't guarantee success, but he would not let Willard escape. Sometime later, Su Lin stood at a burial site. 2 bodies were being lowered into the ground. Prayers were spoken. Ritual words about purification, light, and peace echoed in the wind. The head of the Bureau watched in silence while another official recited sacred lines from a book. The atmosphere was heavy, and yet George was not truly among the dead. Back at the cafe, Shun Yu offered Su Lin a new coffee blend. She hesitated, then took a sip. Her eyes widened with bright delight. She finished the cup in seconds, completely forgetting the heat. Shun Yu blinked, surprised. These investigators really aren't afraid of burning their tongues, he muttered. She placed the cup down and told him about a recent conference among B-rank investigators. 2 major decisions had been made. First, because summoning incidents kept happening in band, all A and S rank investigators were being recalled to the city. Second, the Bureau had decided not to oppose Shun Yu. In fact, they wanted to maintain a good relationship with him. From now on, Su Lin would be his official contact instead of George. He frowned. Favors? You mean you'll eat and drink here on public funds? She stammered in embarrassment and clarified that she meant official coordination, not free meals. She also added something else. Band had become infamous. People across continents might now infiltrate the city specifically to summon extraterrestrial forces, believing it had become common practice here. Shun Yu nodded calmly. Then he asked the question she didn't expect. How is George? She hesitated. That old stubborn man had said he needed time. He had unfinished matters to deal with. He couldn't appear publicly yet. Shun Yu smiled softly. Now I understand. On a rooftop somewhere in the city, George stood beside Byron, alive. George asked him directly if he truly communicated with an extraterrestrial god. Why bring him back? Wasn't that dangerous? Byron answered quietly. George had a choice: swear allegiance to that power, or report everything to the Bureau, and doom himself, Byron, and Byron's daughter in the process. There was no clean path left. George shouted in frustration. Why force him into such a corner? Byron stood at the edge of the roof and replied calmly. They no longer had the luxury of choice. They could only accept fate and begin a new life. George noticed how happy Byron looked after his daughter's revival. He joked bitterly that he should record this moment for her to see someday. Don't, Byron snapped. Later, Su Lin told Shen Yu that George was probably happier now. He had complained about work every day. Now he could finally rest. Shen Yu laughed. "You're being too harsh." She replied that he had only acted serious before. Soon she left the cafe, walking through a crowded street, but something felt strange, as if everything had already been calculated, as if every step, every faction, the Anti-Magic Bureau, the Order of Ashen Chaos, the Quiet Tongue, were merely pieces on a vast chessboard, and someone was moving them. Him. Suddenly, something in her pocket glowed. A burning pain spread across her abdomen. She stumbled into an alley, lifted her shirt slightly, and saw a glowing magical mark etched into her skin. "What kind of seal is this?" she whispered. 2 months passed. The cafe flourished under clear skies. Shen Yu had narrowly avoided bankruptcy. Business was booming so much that he considered hiring help. A blue sphere of magic rotated between his fingers. After the last summoning incident, the duration of his freezing ability had increased to 10 seconds. He had nearly used it when he was about to lose everything financially. A notebook lay open before him. Notes about relics, powers, and limits filled its pages. Su Lin had mentioned that the Bureau was currently overlooking his minor violations, but reputations were fragile. Policies could change overnight. Shen Yu's eyes shimmered with magical light. Invisible rays of energy radiated around him, bending subtly in his presence. The cafe bustled with laughter and music. And at the center of it all, smiling as he served coffee, stood a man who might just be controlling far more than anyone realized. Willard emerged like a prophet stepping out of a storm and revealed the truth about the cross. Anyone who possesses it gains access to a flawless magical barrier, one that exists beyond physical reality. No wound, poison, or curse can bypass it. The body may suffer, but the barrier remains untouched. Yet the protection demands a price. The user begins to hear too much. Voices, whispers, layered sounds separating and multiplying, until their mind slowly drifts toward uncontrollable madness. Holding the blue sphere, he simplifies it in his own way. The cross is like handing a century's worth of knowledge to someone unprepared. For the ignorant, such information is far more valuable than relics. Willard's memories alone outweigh ancient artifacts, shadow masks, movement rings, the ancient cross. He understands their mechanics completely, and yet strangely, he has never paid their cost. Perhaps that is the privilege of one touched by an extraterrestrial god. His mind is filled with methods for mastering nonverbal techniques, skills even ordinary people could theoretically learn. But he himself cannot seem to advance. He attempts rituals in his cafe, but nothing happens. Frustration creeps in. Maybe he simply lacks talent. Then a voice resounds nearby, grand and theatrical. It speaks of Earth invading another world, of a faceless nation that conquered millions, of a colorless city that absorbs lands endlessly. A gift is offered, a blade that can change its shape. The invitation is clear. Open a passage and enter as something insignificant, just to witness the city's strength. He accepts. Smoke coils around him, swallowing his body. Within the haze, he recalls fragments of lore. This colorless city, a vast realm formed from devoured territories, seemingly without end. Somewhere within it exists a god of the blade, and across every captured land stand armies at war. Perhaps no gift will be freely given, but weapons are granted to all who infiltrate, so they may fight in time. He examines the knife in his hand. If he hides it carefully, perhaps he can move unnoticed. The world shifts to black and white. He stands before an enormous structure, an impoverished college, he calls it. When he reaches toward it, the surroundings distort as if painted scenery melting under rain. Strange place. Is everything here truly drained of color? A feeling tells him someone is waiting in the library. He dons a mask, straightens a formal suit, grips a cane, and walks forward, quietly reciting praise for the Order of Ashen Chaos and their sacrifices. Inside, shelves of books stretch endlessly. Then she appears. A woman with silver hair, red eyes, and snow-white skin. Beautiful, composed, older than she first seems. She introduces herself as the all-knowing witch, the one who awakened and summoned him. She welcomes him warmly, almost playfully, which unsettles him more than hostility would have. She explains her request. The Light Hunters demand a blade from her. She refuses to hand her treasures to ordinary mortals. Instead, she wants his blade to offer in exchange. His reward? Another blade. He blushes despite himself. When he first summoned this realm, he never imagined speaking so calmly with someone inside it. She might not even be human. He hopes she is not a succubus. Smiling, she sweetens the offer. As a bonus, she will show him fragments of the future. First, though, she gives him a silver glass pearl, the promised shape-shifting blade condensed into an orb. He accepts and, in return, produces an item from his pocket and tosses it to her. The answer, he demands. Her expression shifts. The light hunter, she reveals, will soon arrive in band. He seeks someone pretending to be a god and intends to erase everything connected to that false divinity. Is she speaking about him? In the eyes of the clergy, impersonating a god is no trivial offense. Has someone reported him, or was his ascent simply too visible? Then comes the prophecy. The one pretending to be a god will ultimately lose. Before that loss, he will triumph, defeat his enemies, crush opposition, rise high. But at the most crucial moment, when light pierces the darkness and all eyes turn toward him, he will descend from the heavens and vanish. No trace will remain. He will simply cease to exist. Wind curls at his feet. The vision collapses. He finds himself back among dust and tables, heart heavy with the sense that events are already accelerating. And then, as if drawn from a distant memory, another scene unfolds, one from 1,000 years ago. A kingdom prospered, intoxicated by desire. Its armies grew powerful, almost superhuman. But revolution erupted when a witch, sealed by a sect, was dragged into the royal square. Silver hair, red eyes, beauty so overwhelming that men, women, elders, children, all fell silent before her presence. She announced she would predict their future as an act of gratitude. The cheers faded instantly. And smiling before the gathered crowd, she began. The witch in the royal square smiled and delivered her prophecy without hesitation. The kingdom would fall. Not just its king or its army, but everyone. Men, women, children, the elderly. All would perish. The crowd froze. Then outrage erupted. They called her a liar, a demon, a curse upon the land. They wanted her hanged, burned, torn apart. Some demanded her blood be spilled publicly, her head displayed as proof that fate could be defied. She simply laughed and vanished. Years passed, and nothing seemed to change. The kingdom continued to thrive. Its armies conquered nearly half the known lands. No rival could challenge them. Prosperity blinded them. Until the royal family grew greedy enough to reach beyond the living world. Seeking dominion over everything, they attempted to seize the afterlife itself. They summoned a god tied to the realm of the dead. In a single instant, the kingdom was erased. No ruins, no survivors, only silence. From that day forward, the silver-haired witch with red eyes became a legend. The sinner who foretold the end. The witch who destroyed a civilization. Every oracle, fortune teller, and prophetess that followed claimed descent from her bloodline. The vision fades. He finds himself standing in what appears to be Yale Willard's former office. The remnants inside are worth little, hardly enough to matter. His gaze drops to the magic sphere in his hand. Comparing the witch's appearance to someone he knows, a thought forms. Anna, could she be a descendant? He studies the orb more carefully. There is no mistake. The sphere glows brighter, flooding the room with cold light. He examines the gift he received, a shape-shifting blade of the destruction class. It can become any weapon its wielder desires and carries immense power, but its cost is horrifying. Each use demands part of the owner's body, a finger, an ear, skin, perhaps even something internal. The loss is permanent. The wound cannot be healed. Attempts to restore it will only trigger worse consequences. The price never fades. He holds the transparent pearl and reasons that this weapon is exactly what he needs for offense. Until now, he has never paid a price when using artifacts. Why should this be different? He squeezes the pearl and commands it to change. Smoke bursts outward, spreading across the room and wrapping around him like a living shadow. When it clears, he stands transformed. Tailored suit, hat, polished shoes. In his hand, a cane. Elegant, respectable. He twirls it thoughtfully. The cane is solid, heavy, both weapon and symbol. And once again, he has paid nothing. Perhaps this immunity truly is a gift from an extraterrestrial god. Still, caution lingers. Every new connection to higher powers carries consequences. He is accumulating tools, defensive barriers, offensive weapons. But does he truly understand what he has gained from the colorless city? Half an hour later, frustration sets in. He experiments constantly, yet discovers nothing new. Exhausted but unwilling to sleep, He reaches for the door to fetch coffee. The handle snaps off in his hand. He stares at it in disbelief. A light kick at the door sends it crashing to the floor. Silence. Did his strength increase? Or has something within him fundamentally changed? The realization hits harder than the broken wood. How much will repairs cost? He had only just stabilized his finances. Sitting at the table, he mutters that relying solely on artifacts is not enough. If his defense improved, there is one way to confirm it. He draws a knife and slices his palm. Blood spills. Pain surges through him. At that exact moment, the cafe door opens. A blonde girl steps inside and stares at the scene in horror. Is this some kind of hobby? Her expression seems to say. He panics at the sight of his own blood, quickly trying to compose himself. Inviting her to sit, he forces a smile and offers coffee. She confidently orders iced coffee, even though a snowstorm rages outside and her clothes are soaked through. He studies her carefully. Late at night, polite, calm, requesting iced coffee in freezing weather. Definitely not ordinary. Still, he hands her a towel and prepares her drink. He reminds himself to move gently. His strength is no longer predictable. He cannot afford to break more furniture. He serves her a cup decorated with intricate milk art. As she lifts it, her thoughts spiral. According to rumors in the other world, the cafe owner is a puppeteer, a being who manipulates anyone who seeks his help. First, he reveals the sweetness and bitterness of existence. Then, at the moment hope blooms, he crushes it and plunges souls into despair. A psychopath. He simply wonders why she is trembling. She, meanwhile, recalls how he single-handedly wiped out the Quiet Tongue, an organization that once controlled band from the shadows. Even the Anti-Magic Bureau warned others not to provoke him. What kind of monster is he? Breaking the tension, he asks about her purpose. She admits it directly. She belongs to an authoritative office, what many call a completionist group, mercenary-like operatives who handle requests from the lower strata of the other world. They rarely maintain honest ties with the Anti-Magic Bureau. Recently, however, a new faction surfaced, the Hidden Pupil. Its members call themselves observers. They record events in the other world, but traditionally never interfere. Harmless watchers. Until 2 days ago. Without warning, they went mad. They began slaughtering people from the other world. Most of her colleagues died under bizarre circumstances, killed by a force so incomprehensible that no one understands it. She wants revenge, and she needs his help. Blushing, she declares she is willing to do anything in exchange. Her imagination fills with dark rumors about his supposed cruelty. He stares at her, confused. What is she doing? She grows embarrassed, misreading his silence. Perhaps he only enjoys harming himself. Perhaps he has no interest in her at all. He finally speaks. He has no intention of getting involved. This is her problem. The rejection stings. She nods, forcing composure, and prepares to leave. At the door, he offers her an umbrella, tells her to return it later. She lowers her eyes and steps back into the storm, vegetables in hand, mind racing. If he truly had no interest in her, why lend her something personal from the cafe? If he does not desire her body, then she will try another approach. Next time, she will make him regret refusing her. A red-haired girl appeared beneath an open umbrella, bright and bold, the exact opposite of the trembling completionist who had just left. It was almost ironic. If subtlety failed, perhaps this louder style would succeed instead. Meanwhile, he sat alone in the kitchen, expression twisting as numbers ran through his head. Bills, repairs, supplies. At this rate, bankruptcy wasn't some distant threat, it was imminent. His gaze drifted to the ring glowing faintly on his finger. That artifact could tilt fortune in his favor. Good luck during the day, misfortune at night. But it required a ritual. 3 knocks before wearing it. He would test it tomorrow. If he could afford to fix the broken door. The next day, the cafe was quiet. Only 2 customers sat inside, both familiar faces. One of the girls seemed upset and clearly didn't want conversation, so he wisely kept his distance. Then a mustached man in a fine suit approached with a wide smile and praised the cafe's coffee. He spoke passionately about acidity, the way it gives coffee life, energy, even a soul. Without it, coffee becomes hollow, empty. Amused, he thanked the man. Then came the surprise. Sponsorship. A red envelope changed hands. Relief washed over him. At least for now, the cafe would survive. The man mentioned his employer, an influential figure who would soon dine with another wealthy philanthropist, and assured him of continued support. That night, lying in bed, he finally allowed himself to relax. With backing secured, perhaps prosperity wasn't impossible. He drifted into sleep, dreaming of wealth. Then the light came. He opened his eyes into a white, endless space. "Anna?" he asked. A voice resounded, grand and reverent, addressing him as the source of torment, the Lord hidden in white fog. Anna appeared kneeling before him, trembling, calling him the Almighty Lord of Ash. He smiled faintly, though something felt off. Looking closely, she seemed older, more mature, and there was something empty in her eyes. No soul, no spark. He waved his hand in front of her face. She responded, claiming she could feel his presence. The connection was distorted. She explained why she summoned him. The hidden pupil had gathered enough evidence to suggest that a mysterious society planned to summon an extraterrestrial god in band. He wasn't impressed. He had expected something grander. Still, the details were troubling. During preparations, members of the hidden pupil began to lose their sanity. They slaughtered people from the other world indiscriminately, yet never touched those from the Misty World. That distinction mattered. He considered the mechanics, recording history, observing events. Was it possible they were extracting some special factor, a spiritual trigger, something like a summoning signal? Perhaps there truly was a god obsessed with history itself, one that watched the past like a scholar flipping through pages. Anna suddenly cried out that members of the order had been attacked as well. He gently placed a hand on her head and stabilized the connection. Calm. It was still Era 26 in this mental space. She asked what would happen to the order. Should they fight back? He paused. Rather than provide a direct answer, he told her to wait. Time would reveal the outcome. Sometimes restraint was wiser than immediate action. The dreamscape began to dissolve. Anna accepted his guidance. He preferred meeting this way, safer, controlled. But then another voice intruded, one carried by white fog. He opened his eyes again, sensing a different presence. This time it was Byron. Byron knelt respectfully within the mist and thanked him for the resurrection of his daughter. The man seemed revitalized, full of purpose, but he had a request. The Salian clan had approached him. They invited him to enter something called Grey Dust, pledging loyalty. Byron was unsure whether to join another organization and sought approval. The name stirred faint memories. The Salian clan had existed on the second continent 1,000 years ago. Were they truly still active? And what exactly was Grey Dust? Rather than overthink it, he gave a simple answer. If Byron wished to join, he could. There was no need to hesitate. The mist faded. He awoke in his bed, 4 a.m. Sleep was impossible now. Sitting cross-legged, he summoned the magic sphere again. It floated before him, illuminating the room. A voice echoed from within, offering historical clarity. Among the Franks, the most noble once called themselves Salons. They were a human race from the second continent, white-skinned with gold or silver hair and brown or blue eyes. The Salon clan had once been one of the most powerful and influential bloodlines, but they were nearly wiped out. The night grew quieter as the truth unfolded, and he listened carefully, because ancient bloodlines rarely resurface without reason. 1,000 years ago, the bloodline of the Salon clan didn't disappear. Their descendants still exist somewhere in the other world. These people carry the same reputation their ancestors had, extreme pride and a deep sense of superiority. They rarely associate with anyone they consider beneath their status. When he heard this, he closed his eyes for a moment and muttered quietly, realizing he was dealing with an ancient, aristocratic, mystical family. The magic sphere continued explaining. Grey Dust, it said, is one of the most powerful and mysterious wizard organizations on the entire second continent. Over the centuries, it has produced numerous high-level mages, but their true motives remain unknown. The organization itself has existed for thousands of years. He opened his eyes slowly and sat in silence for a while, thinking it through. Then he suddenly grabbed the magic sphere, brought it close to his face, and then smiled. Whatever its origin was, the thing had become incredibly useful. Sometime later, a visitor walked into the coffee shop. She noticed the cafe's cat staring at her like it was challenging her to a staring contest. She didn't seem intimidated at all. The cat let out a loud meow. Before things escalated, he quickly stepped in, gave the cat a light tap, and told it not to scare the customers. Lynn, who was watching nearby, burst out laughing. He asked her to stop laughing and then casually asked if she had come for business again. She nodded. Apparently, an old man from the slums had died unexpectedly. Recently, traces of spiritual art had been discovered near where he lived. According to her, the old man had always been kind. He liked to spoil the neighborhood kids, giving them fruit and small gifts. He seemed like a genuinely good person, and she had just seen him not long ago. He asked if she wanted help finding out who was responsible. She answered yes without hesitation. The situation with fortune tellers had become chaotic, and most investigators were currently focused on the hidden pupil case. She didn't have many people she could rely on, so she came to him. Hearing the name hidden pupil immediately caught his attention. That was the real reason this conversation interested him. He casually mentioned the group, calling them unfortunate lunatics, and asked what she thought about them. She frowned, confused by his wording. In her mind, she wondered if he already controlled the situation behind the scenes. After all, the strange seal on her stomach still couldn't be removed, and she suspected he was responsible for it. Eventually, she explained that the Anti-Magic Bureau had already confirmed the Hidden Pupil organization had dangerous intentions. An investigator named Irank and his team were currently responsible for eliminating them. According to their research, the members originally came from the Misty World. Most of them were scientists and history enthusiasts who were fascinated by mysterious phenomena. But at some point, they began gathering together, and, one by one, they lost their sanity. He calmly replied that he already knew about that. In exchange for helping, he asked her to check the archives for information about two things: the Light Hunter and someone pretending to be a god. She repeated the names, clearly puzzled, but he ended the conversation there and told her she could leave. Night fell outside. The glowing vegetable sign of the cafe flickered in the darkness. Elsewhere, the completionist girl stood outside a building, narrowing her eyes with determination. She quietly listed everything connected to the mystery: the Light Hunter, the false god, the hidden pupil, the Salon clan, gray dust, and now the suspicious death of an old man. To her, it all felt connected, too many threads pointing in the same direction. In her mind, coincidences like that simply didn't exist. At that moment, the black fog around her shifted. He stepped out wearing a black suit and a white mask. Slipping the ring onto his finger, he noticed something disappointing. No lucky events had happened today either. For a moment, he wondered if his expensive, mystical tools were losing their effectiveness. He joked to himself that it would be nice if someone among his followers would at least offer a few gold bars as a sacrifice. Even jewelry or a check would be acceptable. With that thought, he locked the cafe and stepped outside into the deep night. Stars glittered across the sky. Not far away, the completionist girl leaned against a wall holding a syringe filled with red liquid. It was her last dose of K155 madness blood. If she injected it in time, she might survive what was coming. Her vision was already fading. She knew she would be captured soon. Suddenly, she sensed something approaching. She turned around and saw a terrifying monster advancing toward her. She panicked. Just two of these creatures had already wiped out their entire headquarters. If she had a little more time, she might have convinced the cafe owner to help them. The monster lunged forward. Before it could reach her, a cane swung through the air. He appeared out of nowhere and knocked the creature away with a single motion. Smiling, he casually wondered if he had become stronger lately, or if the monster was just pathetically weak. In his mind, he was mostly pleased that he looked incredibly cool in that moment. The completionist girl stared at him in shock. This had to be the cafe owner. The way he handled that twisted creature so effortlessly made it obvious he possessed terrifying destructive power. But her eyes widened even more when something massive rose behind him. A towering figure with thin horns and a sword radiated an overwhelming aura. She felt certain she was witnessing the presence of an extraterrestrial god. Maybe this man was a messenger of such a being. Or maybe he wasn't human at all. Perhaps he was the embodiment of chaos itself. Meanwhile, he glanced at the creature and thought awkwardly that it just looked like a giant mutated fish. Now he was worried that knocking it around like that might hurt his mysterious reputation. The girl dropped to her knees, tears forming in her eyes. No one could stay calm in front of the aura of an extraterrestrial god, except maybe that strange succubus he once met. He turned toward Christy and greeted her. She greeted him back and handed him a glowing blue package. Inside were materials needed to create a potion called Dream Vision. She explained that it was meant for him. If he helped avenge her fallen teammate, she would lead him to the Hidden Pupil's hideout. He smiled, saying that sounded like a good deal. The monster chasing her was probably just one of their members who had lost control. Aside from looking terrifying, it didn't seem particularly impressive. Christy injected the madness blood into her shoulder and immediately declared they should destroy the monster's base. Not long after, they arrived at their destination. As they walked, Christy remembered how her team used to be. 10 colleagues working side by side, laughing together like family. In the blink of an eye, those monsters had torn them apart. Only 3 members of the organization remained alive. One of them had already decided to leave and return to a normal life. She never expected the name of their group, the Last Flower, would become a prophecy of loneliness. He noticed her silence and asked if she was okay. She forced a smile and said she was fine, but the sadness lingered. In her mind, she began calculating a new strategy. If she wanted real results, she needed to get closer to this man. Maybe she should kneel and swear loyalty. Maybe she should call him Master. Flattery hadn't worked so far, and even her potion had no effect on him. What else could she offer? Money crossed her mind, but even her savings of several millions suddenly felt meaningless compared to his power. They eventually stopped walking. He looked ahead and asked if this was the place. Christy confirmed it. In front of them flowed an endless river. The enemy hideout was hidden beneath the water. She explained that this location was originally a base for secret organizations. The hidden pupil members, scientists from the Misty World, had used it as their research center. They were fascinated by history and mystical phenomena. No one knew when things changed. Somehow they gained superhuman strength and began calling themselves observers. At first, they simply recorded everything that happened in their world. Eventually, they lost their sanity and transformed into monsters. He listened quietly and suggested there must be some outside influence behind it, perhaps an extraterrestrial being or a powerful mystical artifact. Christy looked at him with admiration and gave him a thumbs up, calling him a genius. He looked a little embarrassed and asked her not to call him that. It made him uncomfortable. She frowned slightly, realizing he had noticed her flattery. Then he stepped forward and told her to stand back. A flame appeared in his hand. Since the enemy base was underwater, he said it would be best to test the situation first. Energy flames began to spread around him as he prepared to make his move. Christy stared in disbelief as the energy in his hand suddenly expanded. What started as a small flow of power quickly grew stronger. The stream of energy skimmed across the surface of the river and then shot straight down into the water. He focused carefully, thinking there had to be some kind of mechanism hidden below. Moments later, the energy forced something upward, a concealed, complex button embedded underwater. He immediately knew he had found the trigger. Turning to Christy, he calmly told her there was a device hidden beneath the water. She just kept staring at him, almost afraid to even breathe. Even the way he whispered sounded intimidating to her. In her mind, he had become the embodiment of destructive power. He noticed her reaction and suddenly felt a little awkward, apologizing for doubting her earlier. At the same time, he was secretly excited. It was rare to see someone react so strongly to him. Christy smiled and told him it was fine. With the mechanism discovered, he suggested they move forward. He used the cane to press the button, and part of the water system shifted, opening an entrance. Christy couldn't help but praise him again, calling him brilliant and impressive. The two of them stepped into a tunnel that had opened along the riverbank. Inside, everything was pitch black. Christy stopped and said she needed a moment to grab something. She began searching inside her coat, carefully feeling through an inner pocket. When he noticed where she was reaching, he looked surprised and awkwardly asked if she really needed to store items there. She ignored the comment and kept searching until she finally pulled something out, a golden plate. Raising it proudly, she explained that it represented the Great Flame. He watched quietly as she described it. The first flame was considered the only true god on the second continent. Millions of people worshipped it. Out of the billions on Earth, at least half followed this belief. The flame symbolized life and light, and its sacred time was noon. She lifted the plate and recited a short spell. A glowing sphere of light appeared in her palm. He nodded in approval and said it would help them move safely through the darkness. They hadn't walked far when a pair of glowing red eyes suddenly appeared ahead. A fish-like monster lunged at them from the shadows. He reacted instantly, pulling his cane forward and stopping the creature mid-attack. Christy watched in amazement. The strength he displayed was incredible. She began casting a spell of her own. A green glow formed in front of her. He asked what she was doing, but she pointed down a nearby corridor and explained she had already cleaned up the monsters lurking there. He quickly realized she was trying to impress him. Smiling, he praised her again, and the two continued deeper into the underground base. More creatures appeared as they walked through the massive stone tunnels, but he handled them easily. To Christie, the way he fought made him look like an unstoppable beast. Eventually, he stopped suddenly. Christie froze too, wondering if he had discovered some hidden clue about the hidden pupil members. But his thoughts were elsewhere. He was thinking about the colorless city, an extraterrestrial entity whose consciousness seemed to be entering a dormant state. If it was resting, that might explain why its power wasn't fully active. They stepped into a large chamber. A faint blue glow filled the room. At first, it was hard to understand what they were seeing, but then the illusion became clear. Spiritual art had created something like an invisible glass wall. Beyond it, water filled the space, and schools of fish swam peacefully. The entire scene looked like a giant aquarium. Christie was stunned. All of it had been created through spiritual techniques. He asked her again about the hidden pupil group. Weren't they originally just researchers from the misty world who knew nothing about the supernatural? She confirmed that was correct. He pointed out something important. Building a massive underwater facility and using spiritual arts powerful enough to hold back an entire river wasn't the work of amateurs. Christie immediately understood what he meant. That meant someone within the hidden pupil organization must actually come from the other world, or at least have access to advanced mystical knowledge. He complimented her observation skills before moving toward the next exit. For the past 2 months, he had been studying mystical knowledge through the soul sphere he received from Willard. Now he finally had a chance to test everything he had learned. They continued through the tunnels. Suddenly, Christie grabbed his arm and whispered for him to stop. Several pairs of burning red eyes appeared in the darkness ahead. She stepped behind him, trembling. A group of fish monsters slowly emerged from the shadows, roaring loudly. Confused, she asked why they were all staring at her. He noticed the glowing light she was holding and calmly told her to aim the beam toward him. The light was attracting the monsters. She nodded and directed the glow forward. The monsters rushed in. He immediately activated a protective barrier. The creatures crashed into it and were thrown aside. Then he pulled out a cross-shaped artifact that strengthened his defense, making him nearly untouchable. At the same time, his cane began to transform. It stretched and twisted until it became a massive whip. With a single swing, he struck the first monster. Another strike killed the second. He kept lashing the air with precise movements until every creature lay dead. Soon, a pile of corpses covered the floor. He looked at the disgusting scene and grimaced. Christie suddenly turned away and started vomiting. He honestly felt like doing the same. After she recovered, he asked her to clean up the mess. She used her magic carefully, determined to demonstrate her abilities properly. While watching her work, he felt a little jealous of her spiritual techniques. For a moment, he even wondered if he should hire her at the cafe. But considering how sensitive she seemed to supernatural pressure, he suspected staying around him too long might drive her insane. A moment later, she called out to him and handed over a diary she had found hidden in a secret compartment behind a desk. He praised her work. She looked delighted by the compliment and handed the diary to him so he could read it. Inside, the writer described a man called White. According to the notes, the members of Hidden Pupil believed he was a miracle worker guiding them toward a higher form of existence. They considered him noble, wise, and kind. He had taught them many secrets about mystical power. One entry described an incredible event. White had demonstrated his power by constructing a massive underwater palace and sealing it so the river couldn't flood inside. Through his guidance, the group gained new supernatural abilities. Following White's instructions, they began collecting special factors required to summon a god. But things soon became strange. The writer mentioned feeling constant pain throughout his body. Food made him feel sick, and his body seemed to be changing. White assured them this was normal and told them to finish gathering the required materials as quickly as possible. The diary also mentioned a new assistant who had recently joined their group, a blind boy not even 10 years old who supposedly possessed the ability to see the future. The writer wondered if participating in these experiments was truly a good idea. As he finished reading, he realized something important. White, the supposed miracle worker, was most likely the one manipulating the entire Hidden Pupil organization from the shadows. The question now was why? Why did White need those mysterious factors? What kind of experiment was he planning? And what exactly did summoning that god mean? Christie finished reading the diary notes out loud. Shun Yu listened carefully, nodding as she spoke. When she finished, he praised her, saying she had read it very well and that her voice was surprisingly pleasant. She immediately lit up with excitement and proudly said she had tried her best. Shun Yu smiled to himself. He realized that giving her a little praise seemed to work wonders. Maybe he should compliment her more often in the future. Christy then frowned and pointed out something disturbing about the diary. Whoever wrote those notes clearly wasn't thinking straight. Treating the involvement of an extraterrestrial god like something normal was already insane. Even people from the misty world should know that contacting such beings was forbidden. The fact that the writer described their physical changes as a normal reaction meant they had probably already fallen into madness. Shen Yu agreed with her reasoning. The diary confirmed that something had gone terribly wrong within the hidden pupil organization. Still, he said they should continue searching for anything useful. Christy immediately responded with enthusiasm. The moment he gave the order, she ran off to search the room. After a while, she returned, breathing heavily. It looked like someone had already taken most of the important items from the base. The only thing left behind was the diary, which they probably forgot to collect. Shun Yu calmly reassured her that it wasn't a problem. She had still done a good job. Then he casually mentioned that starting today she would help provide him with information. Christy's eyes widened with excitement. She immediately agreed and called it a great honor. Shen Yu looked at her, a little surprised. She was extremely easy to motivate. Just a couple of compliments and she was already thrilled. Meanwhile, Christy's thoughts were racing. She even wondered if she should kneel down and swear loyalty to him. She wanted to make him happy, but at the same time, the idea of kneeling and calling him master every time they met made her feel embarrassed enough to die. Still, if that was what he wanted, she felt ready to do it. Instead, Shen Yu gave her a different task. He asked her to investigate the recent death of an old man who lived in the nearby slums. The man was known for giving candy to poor children and had died not long ago. Christy frowned in confusion but quickly agreed. In her mind, this was an opportunity. Even though most of her colleagues from the last flower organization were gone, she still had many connections. If necessary, she could spend a little money to gather information. Just then, a loud noise echoed through the corridor. A violent stream of water suddenly burst through the underground structure. Shen Yu shouted that the place was flooding. It had to be a trap left behind by the so-called miracle worker. He quickly assessed the situation. He could transform into smoke and escape through a crack in the walls, but Christy wouldn't be able to survive the flood. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the ancient cross. It was the only option left. Throwing it toward her, he shouted for her to grab it. The cross landed on her chest just as the rushing water slammed toward them. Inside his mind, Shen Yu focused on the power of the colorless city. The artifact could reinforce the body, making it temporarily almost indestructible. A bright white glow burst out from the cross. Christy seemed to fall into a trance as the artifact activated. Moments later, everything went dark. When she regained consciousness, she found herself lying on the riverbank, surrounded by white mist. Shun Yu stood nearby, completely dry. Thanks to his shape-shifting ability, he had already changed his clothes. In his mind, it was a simple trick he liked to call his personal life hack. He glanced down at Christy and thought about the cross. Wearing that artifact for too long could kill its user. It was safer not to exceed about 30 minutes. Christy was still lying there when he reached down to take the cross back. Just as he touched it, she suddenly opened her eyes. Embarrassed, she immediately shut them again. Shun Yu calmly took the cross and smiled, saying he was glad she had finally woken up. Christy looked at him with surprise. For a moment, she felt like she had woken up at the wrong time. Shun Yu quickly scolded her for thinking something strange like that. There was nothing wrong. The important thing was that she was safe. Then he told her she should head home, but she needed to stay alert. Someone might already be watching her. Christy nodded and left. After she disappeared, Shun Yu looked around thoughtfully. Something felt strange. Christy hadn't sensed any vibration from the artifact earlier, which meant someone else had probably activated something nearby. The clock hadn't even struck midnight yet. The surrounding fog thickened. When it finally cleared, Shun Yu saw Byron kneeling in front of him. He sighed internally. Once again, his overly devoted assistant had fainted nearby. Earlier, Yana had approached Byron and suggested that maybe he wasn't actually planning to summon an extraterrestrial god. But Byron had immediately promised to pay her more money than usual if she helped him with the ritual. Now Byron knelt before Shen Yu, chanting a spell. He called out to the one who ruled over all living things, the being who emerged from the white fog, As an offering, he presented something called the drink of the soul. Shen Yu remembered an old legend from the church. Before the universe existed, the primordial fire created the nourishment of the soul, forming the foundation of the world. According to the story, the first humans were born from the white air. Many people didn't believe the legend, but some claimed that consuming such a soul essence could create a true living spirit. Byron extended the offering with absolute devotion. Shen Yu accepted it while remembering the information he had seen inside Willard's soul sphere. For ordinary people, the drink of the soul was mostly useless. Only extremely rare beings could use it to create or sustain a living spirit. To Byron, Shen Yu was an extraterrestrial god, which meant the offering actually made sense from his perspective. But Shen Yu knew the truth. He wasn't a god at all. He was just pretending. Still, appearances mattered. The last time he had appeared in someone's dream, when he met Anna and Byron, things had looked completely different from his own perspective. That meant these summoning rituals didn't always work the same way. If he moved the wrong way or said something strange, he might completely ruin the illusion. So he lifted his head and sighed like a mysterious being, observing the world from above. Last time, he had recited a few cryptic lines to Byron, and the man had been deeply moved by them. If he didn't say something profound again, Byron might start doubting him. After thinking for a moment, Shen Yu began speaking in a calm, philosophical tone. He explained that there was nothing strange about the situation. A person could only see what they were capable of seeing, and only understand what they were capable of understanding. Byron hears Shen Yu's words and immediately remembers an ancient legend about the unity of all living things. It's one of the most forbidden teachings in alchemy. According to the legend, anyone who masters that principle and the basic foundations of alchemy can gain the ability to separate and recombine all matter in existence. Overwhelmed with devotion, Byron declares that he's ready to serve the great god of the white mist forever. To him, every gift from the god is a blessing. Every command represents fate, and resisting that fate is impossible. He reminds himself that he has already stepped into the gray dust as part of the trials the god mentioned before. Once he proves himself worthy, he'll complete the final task, killing the Hunter of Light. To show his devotion, Byron offers even more treasures as gifts. Shen Yu hears the name Hunter of Light and immediately reacts in his mind. Christie had warned him earlier that this Hunter of Light would come to band and would do anything to kill the so-called false god. The problem is that Shen Yu still isn't sure whether the false god refers to him or someone else. He calmly orders Byron to go to the meeting place where he will find the god's messenger. The messenger is at Bandin College and will provide him with money. But there's also another task Byron must fulfill, one that Shen Yu considers extremely important. Not long after, Shen Yu finds himself back on the lakeshore, emerging from the fog again. He realizes something troubling. The strange phenomenon isn't tied to the cafe after all. It's happening because of him. It also seems like the location where the summoning pulls him changes every time. He notices a small bottle left beside him, another offering from Byron. More importantly, he's now learned about the Hunter of Light. Then a new problem hits him. Bandin College is several kilometers away from the hotel, and it's already late at night. There are no cars around. His hand briefly turns into mist as he wonders if he could fly there, but he quickly decides that's way too risky. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly remembers seeing a bicycle nearby earlier. He walks toward a nearby building where the bike is parked. Quietly apologizing to the owner, he promises he'll return it later. Using his energy, he forms a tiny key in his hand and reshapes it so it fits into the bicycle lock. Meanwhile, Byron stops on a quiet street and uses magic to create a door that leads back home. As soon as he enters, a young girl named Eve runs up to him, worried about how late he is. "Dad, why are you so late? You had me worried." Byron hugs her and apologizes sincerely. She scolds him for a second, but quickly softens, saying the important thing is that he's back. Excitedly, she tells him she's learned several new recipes and wants him to try them. Smoked salmon, butter chicken, baked snails, and a thick meat and vegetable soup. Byron looks at her with surprise and warmth. When she nervously asks if he doesn't like the idea, he smiles and says he can't wait to try everything. While Byron eats dinner with Eve, Shen Yu is racing across the city on the bicycle like his life depends on it. He pedals so fast that his legs start shaking, his pupils turn white, veins appear on his face, and above him, the stars begin shining across the night sky. Back at home, Eve sits on her bed and quietly asks her father if she'll ever be able to go outside and walk around the city. Byron closes his eyes for a moment before answering softly that she will, very soon. She doesn't need to worry. Deep down, he promises himself that he'll return her to the bright world someday. He apologizes again, saying he still has something important to do tonight. Eve simply smiles and tells him it's fine because she was about to go to sleep anyway. She reminds him to be careful. Byron watches her for a moment before leaving the room, silently swearing that she'll live a better life than he ever did. Later, Byron walks into a room filled with shelves of books. Suddenly, someone calls his name. Byron. He turns around and sees Shen Yu standing there. Shen Yu had been worried that Byron might leave before he arrived. Seeing him still here brings him some relief. Byron, however, feels something completely different. From his perspective, Shen Yu appearing right after he arrived feels almost terrifying. Did this man predict his every move? Can he appear anywhere instantly? Byron clenches his fist, convinced that Shen Yu is far more dangerous than he imagined. Shen Yu asks him to explain everything he knows about the Hunter of Light. Byron agrees and begins explaining. The Hunter of Light is a cleric from the Crown Church. He possesses destructive abilities at a very high rank and carries multiple weapons capable of unleashing powerful destruction. The Church doesn't call these items magical artifacts. They prefer the term sacred weapons. The Hunter of Light is one of the 10 clerics of the Church, giving him extremely high status. Recently, he arrived in Ban for unknown reasons. Shen Yu calmly explains the truth, or at least the version he wants Byron to believe. The Hunter of Light came to Ban in order to kill a false god. Byron is shocked. It's the first time he's ever heard about a false god. Still, since it involves a powerful church cleric, he knows this isn't something he can dismiss lightly. Shen Yu tells him to find a way to track the Hunter of Light. He should observe him carefully, but not attempt to kill him yet. Once he gathers more information, he can act accordingly, just like he did with the last mission. Byron bows deeply and confirms he understands the messenger's orders. Thinking back, he remembers how the previous information Shen Yu gave him eventually led to the death of Yale Willard and the complete collapse of a religious group that had existed for more than 1,000 years. The investigator who once held a high rank simply retired after the chaos. Throughout all of that, Shen Yu himself never appeared directly. Yet his influence changed everything. Shen Yu leaves the room, telling Byron that he'll wait for the results of his investigation. Afterwards, Shen Yu rides the bicycle back and eventually returns to the cafe, completely exhausted. Leaning against the counter, he mutters that there probably isn't another divine messenger in the world who has to get around on a bicycle. Slamming his hand on the table, he complains that the whole situation feels like a cruel joke. Then he suddenly realizes something embarrassing. If Anna had seen him racing across the city on a bicycle like that, she probably would have died from secondhand embarrassment. After calming down, he reminds himself that he still has serious work to do. From what Willard discovered earlier, there are other people in Band whose souls have the status of untouchable. That means Shen Yu needs to be careful. Suddenly, the soul sphere bumps into his forehead and his soul pops out briefly. His cat, Cola, catches the sphere midair and lands on the table with it. The cat starts spinning the ball with its paw like it's a toy. Shen Yu watches and sighs. He only recently gave the cat a vaccine, and it's already full of energy again. Then he casually mentions that he'll probably take Cola to the vet soon. The cat immediately stops playing. Night slowly falls over the city. It's September 5th, the day of demon exorcism, a traditional church holiday. On this day, people avoid going outside at night because they believe monsters and demons roam freely. Families stay indoors, prepare large meals together, and pray to the god of fire for the light that protects humanity. According to the tradition, once the divine fire shines in the hearts of believers, all evil spirits in the world will disappear. Shen Yu reads about the holiday on his phone and closes his eyes thoughtfully. He isn't sure whether those monsters actually exist, but one thing is certain. Not a single customer has visited the cafe all day. Just then, he hears a faint sound outside. He steps out and casually says that it looks like a guest has finally arrived. Sitting on the doorstep is a strange girl with horns. Shen Yu immediately asks if she's okay. She looks extremely sick. The girl lowers her head and tries to speak, but Shen Yu gently tells her to rest first. She suddenly refuses, insisting she doesn't need help. Shen Yu stretches out his hand and assures her that he's not a bad person. At that moment, he even wonders if he somehow looks like a criminal. The girl hesitates and explains that she doesn't want to hurt him because she's a monster. Hearing that, Shen Yu looks at her horns again in surprise. Wait, those aren't decorations? He had assumed they were part of some holiday costume. Trying to calm her down, he gently pats her head and tells her everything will be fine. He might even be able to save her. To prove he isn't dangerous, he forms a small flame in his hand and proudly shows it to her. See? Pretty cool, right? The girl stares at the flame in confusion and asks what it is. Now Shen Yu is the one who looks confused. She reminds him that he just said he could save her. And that's when something clicks in Shen Yu's mind. This girl clearly has connections to the other world, and she's lacking a stable existence in this world. She needs inspiration or spiritual support to survive. In other words, she perfectly meets the requirements for becoming a new employee at the cafe. For the first time in a while, Shen Yu starts wondering if the strange luck from the ringing phone might finally be working in his favor. Shen Yu gently takes the girl's hand and tells her they should talk inside. Without wasting another second, he leads her into the cafe. Once inside, he sits her down at a table and asks her to wait for a moment. First, he says, they need to fix her hair. He grabs a towel and quickly dries it. The girl tries to speak again, but Shen Yu rushes off before she can finish, telling her to wait just a little longer. A moment later, he comes back with a hot drink. He places the cup in front of her and says she should drink the coffee to warm up. The girl quietly thanks him. Shen Yu sits across from her and calmly asks her to explain what's going on. Maybe the problem isn't as serious as she thinks. If he can help, he will. For a moment, she stays silent. Then she introduces herself. Her name is Tina, and she's a first-year student at Banyan College. She explains that something strange started happening about a week ago. One night, she looked in the mirror and noticed something wrong with her ears. They didn't look normal anymore. They looked like animal ears. Shen Yu's mind immediately jumps to the phrase, animal ears, but when he looks at her now, her ears appear completely normal. Tina notices him staring and blushes, asking if he could please stop looking at her like that. He quickly apologizes. She hesitates before asking him if he actually believes her story. Shen Yu nods and encourages her to continue. Tina explains that her life used to feel painfully ordinary. Everything was boring and unremarkable. Recently, she became interested in mysticism and supernatural topics. Through some classmates, she got access to several books about it. As Shen Yu listens, he quietly thinks to himself that this sounds exactly like the typical reason people end up getting into dangerous things. Tina continues. She and her friends tried several times to perform rituals or magic described in those books, but none of it ever worked. Eventually, she lost interest and forgot about it. But last week, after taking a shower one evening, she looked in the mirror and saw the change. Her ears had turned into furry animal ears. Shen Yu casually asked whether anything else about her body has changed. Tina nods nervously. She says she's been hearing strange sounds, and the marks on her body keep changing. Shen Yu asks if the changes are similar to the horns on her head now. Were they animal ears before? She confirms it. Sometimes animal ears appear. Sometimes horns grow. Once she even felt like a tail might be forming. At other times, she feels like gills are appearing. It feels like she's slowly turning into a monster. Terrified by the changes, Tina started hiding everything from everyone, even her parents. She covers herself with a hat and thick clothes. She even asked for time off from school so she wouldn't have to attend classes. But the strange voices she hears never stop. Soon she feels like she won't be able to endure it anymore. Shen Yu listens carefully and asks her about someone named White. Did this person ever talk about miracles? Tina thinks for a moment and remembers something. Yes, she once spoke with a man named White in her dreams. He said he had the power to perform miracles. At that moment, Shen Yu's suspicion becomes clear. This White must be the same mysterious figure connected to the Hidden Pupil organization, the one who turned its members into monsters through so-called miracles. It seems Tina became one of his targets. Shen Yu tells her directly that White is not a good person. Tina looks shocked. Shen Yu explains that he recently learned this man has already committed terrible acts before. If possible, she needs to tell him where White is now so he can report the situation to the proper authorities. But Tina lowers her gaze and says something unexpected. White isn't someone she met in real life. He only appears in her dreams. Shen Yu stares at her in confusion. She closes her eyes and repeats that it's true. For the past 2 weeks, she's been dreaming every night. and White always appears in those dreams. Shen Yu frowns, thinking back to what Christie once told him. Members of the Hidden Pupil organization could enter special dreams using a potion. White must have some kind of power connected to dreams. Unfortunately, Shen Yu can't make that potion right now because he's missing many ingredients. Another thought suddenly crosses his mind. Could Tina eventually transform into the same fish-headed monsters he saw earlier? The idea makes him feel sick. Even though he never saw their true forms clearly, imagining the girl who came to him for help turning into something like that fills him with dread. Suddenly, Shen Yu slams his hand onto the table and stands up. He declares that he'll find White inside those dreams. Outside, dark clouds fill the sky and heavy rain pours down. Meanwhile, inside a classroom at the college, a teacher asks a question and several students immediately shout that they know the answer. At that moment, Anna opens the classroom door. The changes in her body have stabilized, but her mind has become sharper than ever. Her thoughts move faster, and she can now clearly sense spiritual energy around her. Ordinary people can't perceive it at all, but Anna can now control the sacred flame and see spiritual power directly in the air. After months of training under the high priest, she has already mastered the first stage of spiritual arts. For her, spiritual energy is no longer mysterious. It's something visible. She closes her eyes and reminds herself that there's no turning back now. This is the most she can do for her friends from the orphanage. A man wearing red robes approaches her and tells her that the high priest wants to see her. She follows him through the building until they reach a large door. The man opens it and explains that the high priest is waiting inside. Anna enters the room and respectfully greets him. She informs him that the director is leaving, and the high priest calmly agrees. He smiles and tells her that before coming here, she should have looked around carefully. He has already fulfilled all of her requests. Her friends from the orphanage are now allowed to study freely and independently. They won't be forced into dangerous missions for the order. Instead, they can take simple duties that will support the organization financially. They will be safe. Anna closes her eyes and thanks him sincerely. The high priest tells her she shouldn't thank him. She should thank the great God instead. Then he informs her that next week they will return to the training camp. A senator is preparing to strengthen his political influence, and their organization wants to support him. The man is nearly 70 years old, and there will soon be a private gathering for his birthday. Anna suddenly realizes who he's talking about. The elderly man with the aquiline nose she once saw when the orator was attacked. She asks whether it's safe since the Anti-Magic Bureau is watching them. The high priest simply smiles. He says she doesn't need to worry. It's just a gathering with ordinary people. She might even meet people her own age there. But he also says she still has a lot to learn, not just about the supernatural world, but about society as well. As he speaks, a small bottle filled with red liquid appears in his hand. He mentions that he has recently been thinking about how to allow more people to experience blessings, things like immortality and eternal youth. After all, that's what most people truly desire. Then he reassures Anna that he hasn't forgotten her request. He has already ordered his followers to investigate everything related to the Hidden Pupil organization. However, even powerful groups are confused about the situation. Anna immediately thinks about the Foundation, an enormous independent organization with global influence and government connections. Compared to the Order of Ash Chaos, the Foundation is a massive force. Anna decides she must report everything she learned to God's messenger. The high priest expected that response. In fact, he believes it's the wisest decision. After she leaves, he quietly reflects that Anna can only find the messenger when God allows it. If he had tried to locate the messenger himself, it would have been seen as disrespectful to divine authority. Later, he turns to one of his red-robed followers and asks about a man named Felix, an aristocrat who promotes a medical corporation. He decides to cancel his meeting with Felix because he has far too many concerns right now. The follower simply nods. The next morning, Tina suddenly wakes up in bed. She quickly checks her body. For the moment, none of the strange changes from the night before are visible. But then she frowns. Why was she even suspicious of Shen Yu? After all, he seemed like such a kind and handsome wizard. She remembers bowing to him last night and thanking him for trying to save her. She still doesn't know how she can properly repay him. She's truly grateful. Nearby, Shen Yu holds a cross artifact in his hand while thinking carefully. If the curse on Tina's body starts changing again, the cross should be able to suppress it. If something even worse appears, she'll need to wear it temporarily before taking it off again. Tina feels a little embarrassed and looks away, noticing that Shun Yu is staring at her strangely. Shun Yu simply tells her to stop worrying and go lie down for a while. He says he'll stay nearby and keep watch. If anything happens, he'll deal with it. Hearing that, Tina suddenly reacts with surprise and blurts out something awkward. Shun Yu just smiles, realizing that her thoughts are definitely not as simple as those of an ordinary girl. A moment later, something strange happens. The horns on Tina's head begin shrinking until they disappear completely. But almost immediately, she cries out in pain. Shun Yu panics and tells her to quickly put on the cross. He ties it around her neck, hoping the artifact will suppress whatever is happening to her body. Just when he thinks things are stabilizing, a new change appears. Two large wings suddenly grow from Tina's back. Shun Yu stares at them in confusion. At this point, he can't even tell if this situation should really be called a curse anymore. At least she isn't turning into one of those horrible fish-headed monsters. Her case seems very different. Trying to calm her down, he tells her that it doesn't look like a serious problem. She doesn't have to worry about becoming a monster. Tina nervously asks if he's serious. Shun Yu smiles and assures her that everything will be fine and that she should get some rest. Later, Tina walks over to Shun Yu, who is sitting quietly at the table with his eyes closed. He's thinking about the strange condition affecting her. Even Willard's soul sphere didn't provide any explanation for the anomaly in her body. In the end, Shun Yu concludes that whatever happened to her might actually be some kind of miracle. Tina then explains another problem. She can't go back home right now. If her parents see her like this, they'll panic. They're extremely religious and would probably take her straight to the church. And for some reason, she doesn't trust the church at all. She asks if there's any way he can help her hide the wings. Shun Yu studies them carefully. He realizes the shadow mask artifact could probably hide them, but he can't lend that item out for too long. Willard's soul sphere mentioned a spiritual technique that could disguise physical changes, but Shun Yu hasn't learned how to use it yet. Still, Tina seems intelligent. He figures she might eventually learn something like that herself. For now, he decides on a simpler solution. He tells her he'll lend her some money so she can stay at a nearby hotel temporarily. Tina reacts with excitement and quickly takes down the number he gives her. Shun Yu looks confused by how enthusiastic she suddenly becomes. He then says he'll go find some clothes that can hide her wings before taking her to the hotel. Sometime later, the cafe lights turn on again, and Shun Yu sits alone at the table, thinking carefully. He remembers how Tina described the mysterious man named White, a tall figure wearing a long white robe with thick hair and a gentle smile. His presence felt warm and comforting, almost like an angel sent by God. That description worries Shun Yu. Someone like that will not be easy to deal with. At the same time, Shun Yu starts thinking about another problem. Letting Tina stay in a hotel forever isn't realistic. Maybe he should start looking for a new apartment where she could stay. Apparently, even in a supernatural world, housing problems still exist. Just then, the cafe door suddenly opens. Christy steps inside looking excited and immediately announces that she found a clue.